Can we go up there? Dallaire asked, pointing at the volcano in the heart of Nair's lands with her eyes alight, completely oblivious to how Ben's stomach sank with the question. Ahem. Sorry, kiddo, but we're here for work, so not this time. Maybe in the future, he told her, praying that she'd forget if the opportunity ever came up. For now, just take in the sights, we should be there soon. Nair had given him directions already, and they were easy to follow. With the new warehouse he was being given not far from the gate network and already coming into sight as they made their way over, letting themselves in and finding only Nadi and Zilly waiting. Workers would be arriving eventually. He'd been assured of that, but that would only be once it was confirmed that he could in fact make an enchanting factory. With materials left there for him to manage the construction needed himself, and he began spending his mana to move and shape the metals and other substances around him at the same time he greeted the other two. Nati, Xilli, Ei. Hope you two are both ready for a fun day. He laughed, getting to watch as both did their best to hide what horror they were feeling as he went on. Oh, and just as importantly, this is my first official student, Dallaire. Dallaire, these are my second and third students, Nadi and Zilly. Same with Jake, you have seniority, so even though they're going to be busy today, if you ever see them again, you have full rights to boss them around, and if they don't listen, tell me and I'll make sure they regret it. Okay. Okay. The girl was glowing with excitement while the other two stopped trying to hide their discomfort, but he didn't bother giving them a chance to say anything about it. Before either could react, they were in his mind, facing far more complicated configurations of his thoughts than he'd ever made them deal with in the past, while at the same time bringing part of Dallaire in for her own lessons while getting her to focus on enchanting out in the real world, all as he directed his focus on what he had to do, which started with pulling one end of a minigate from one of his rings, having the spare from the experiments he'd done out in the Untamed Lands that let him conveniently drop it in his new work area before activating it and reaching through, pulling out his coat from the other end to slip on as he began overfilling his soul. Now that he had this factory, it was by all accounts an extension of the shop for him, free to train in as mana was directed under his power, finishing the basic configuration of the large structure and leaving him with the main goal from there as he went to enchant it. Similar to enchanting a gate, it was a task that by all accounts should have taken days to weeks to finish, but with the mana he could use and the speed he could think at, he was already reducing it, taking half an hour the first time since he'd never constructed an enchantment like that before, while large parts of his thoughts were already considering how he could change and improve it. The factory enchantment was a unique enchanting spell that in essence looked at an example enchantment and reproduced it, able to copy what already existed within it onto other things so long as there was power running through it, and while it was different from anything else he'd done. Once shaped, the only way to see if it worked was to test it, and holding a breath he did exactly that. You could be reading stolen content. Head to Royal Road for the genuine story. Since it was a test, the enchantment he was getting it to work with was simple, placing a fire enchantment on a small rod that could be inserted into part of the factory itself to create a lighter, and as he ran his mana through the factory, he watched as power flowed through the magical structures he'd placed. His mana sense alight with its activation and his excitement only growing as he pulled out the end product, getting to see a perfectly placed enchantment for his efforts. He was grinning from ear to ear with the results, his sheer joy not to be contained. His teacher was right, he had the skill to do it, but now that he knew it, that wasn't enough. He wanted to see if he could improve upon that ancient spell's design. The original factory design used the weave system, but he already had ideas to test to change it, wanting to have it operating on his personal system before the day was up as the next few hours were lost to experimentation, seeing what would work and what wouldn't as aspects were changed again and again until he had something he was happy with. As things currently stand, it looks like by applying my system I can get it down to 1/8 of the size it had been, which means I can fit 8 times more factories in here than expected, which is a huge plus, but can I push this further? As things stood, what he had was one of the more complex arrangements of mana that could be made before him, but there were areas he still wanted to grow and applications of skill that could cross more into his other goals if he just practiced them more, and with that frame of mind he took a serious look at what he'd created before asking himself how to incorporate mana modifiers into it. He already had a few, their touches were showing in most of his work by that point, but he couldn't just keep doing touches. Understanding them was pivotal to his goal of both comprehending and improving the summoning spell. They had to become things he was comfortable using, and with that he began experimenting anew, breaking down what he had and building them back up again and again, feeling what worked and what didn't as more time passed while he did his best to apply everything he knew, having the size once more after a few more hours of work. Better, but I need to get a lot more practice with these things, he muttered to himself. Still, it's a start. Now, Nair, you around? What sort of enchantments do you want being made for this? You mean Dash? Nair clarified, seeing how excited Ben had gotten at the suggestion in a way that rushed him to squash some of it. Ugh, boring but fine. In that case, I'll get started. It shouldn't take long. Even if they took a bit longer to set up given they were all different from the enchantments he'd been making until that point, Ben still made quick work of them, finishing up after an hour while at the same time creating models and blueprints to show how shapes and sizes could be placed in the factory to be properly enchanted on for the people who would be creating them at first until thinking better of it. There was an easier and better option all around as he shaped some of the leftover materials he'd been given and pulled some rainbow mana crystal from one of his rings, creating materializers for each one to create each item in their entirety, needing only to be placed in the factories to finish them off. Except for the ones that need souls, of course, but I'm not sure if I'm even going to be needed here anymore. Am I? Okay. Cool, but as for now, nothing more you want me to try to make? Resistance amulets of all sorts or maybe enchanting factories for mini gates or even regular gates? Nair asked, genuine curiosity in his voice as Ben thought it over. The more complex the enchantment was, the more complex the factory that would be making it needed to be, and gate enchantments were no simple thing no matter the size. He was certain he could do it, but the scale such a thing would end up at would tower above anything he'd currently made unless he was able to refine the design further. I'll at least fiddle with the design in the back of my mind for a bit to see if I can reduce it more, and I'll let you know. As things currently stand, though, it looks like I just have one more thing to finish. Gotta say, I'm pretty disappointed. I was expecting more from them. Sure, but still. It doesn't matter though. I'd been going kind of easy on them since I had the time. Now I'm just going to awaken them the way I did Valeria. Nair sighed in his head, getting a thumbs up for it. You got it. I'm pretty sure this will be mostly safe, and if it isn't, well, Zilly is a blessing mage on top of everything else. She'll make it work out. In the hours he'd been training the two, trying to get them both to awaken, neither had succeeded and Ben was officially out of patience. He'd finished the main thing he'd gone to do there, and he had other tasks to get to, so the gentler configurations of his mind were being dropped, instead going for something he was sure would leave both with powerful migraines but no real injury to go with it as he flashed between those configurations, finally getting results one after another as Nadi and then Zilly finally awakened connect, leaving Ben privy to what they'd received from it. Both of them got the same advanced variant as Valeria, and both of them got bonus skills for it. Interesting. Nadi was left claiming parallel thought for her awakening while Zilly got mental expansion, two skills he had before, in the same way Valeria had gained mental expansion from her awakening as well, making him wonder if the help he gave them all really was the driving force behind it. Find this and other great novels on the author's preferred platform. Support original creators. Something to think about later, I suppose. For now, let's see how they're feeling. Neither awakening had been lost on Dallaire. The girl eyeing the two after flashes of mana had filled the room but now released from his mind. Both Nadi and Zilly's first moves were to flop to the ground, both of them groaning in pain. Don't be dramatic. If it's that unpleasant, then Zilly, start healing already. I just need a second not to vomit first, she groaned out. Nope. Get to it or you're back in my head. A powerful motivator that immediately put her back to work, instantly training her new mental expansion as she began to heal both herself and her friend, gradually easing the pain that they'd been put under, even as they continued to groan. Okay, stop being so over the top. You both got your awakenings and all the benefits that come with it, so congrats, but for now I need to go. Keep working hard, and the next time I'm in town, I'll see if I can squeeze another level out of you. Another groan he ignored, instead leading Dallaire through the gate with him, back to Stonewall to end the day, with his student's mood not going unnoticed. You want to talk about it? He asked her, getting a shake of her head for his efforts. It's fine, she told him, the pout on her face speaking of a different story while he lightly patted her head. Dallaire, I'm your teacher. If there's something bothering you, I'd like you to tell me. He'd seen it in her head while he'd been giving her her lessons, but that wasn't how he wanted to bring it up. He wanted to hear it from her, and after a few moments of hesitation, she finally brought it up. Am I your worst student? Now, why would you think something silly like that? Because they just awakened skills right there, and you said Jake was a non-affinity mage, and I'm not as good with the enchanting system as he and Thera were, even though I've been doing it long and I'm just not there. He crouched down to meet her eyes. Delaire, their skills might be higher than yours, but that's not because you're worse, you guys just had different starting places. Nadi's the granddaughter of a god, and Zilly and Jake are both from the Summon group, which means they came to this world with awakened skills already and incredible power, and all of them have been getting resources poured into them. You haven't. The explanation didn't help though, only bringing her face down further. So that means I am your worst one. It means you didn't have any of the advantages they had, but none of that matters. You want to know why? Why? Because you've got me? He laughed. They only get a little bit of my time here and there, but you get as much as I can give, and that's going to make all of the difference in the world for you. Yeah, your skills might not be at their level right now, but who cares? Anything you want to learn I'll teach, and as far as you want to grow, I'll help you get there. You've got the greatest resource in the world right here, so don't let how well others are doing get you down. I'll make sure you blow past them all. He understood the insecurity all too well. He'd gone through his fair share himself, but it was because of that he felt confident telling her as much. She was his main student, and as much as she wanted to grow, he'd work to help her achieve it, be it in the skills she was currently working on or more beyond too, with his declaration being rewarded with a smile. Really? Really? It's still going to take work on your part, and it's going to take time too, but you're already learning way more than anyone would expect for your level. You'll easily grow a hell of a lot more in the next few months. You've just got to do your best to live up to your own expectations as well. I will. Good. He laughed before picking her up to carry her on his shoulders to take her back home. I already know you can do it, and I'm here with you the entire way. If there's ever anything you want to improve on or skill you want to get, just ask and we'll figure out how to make it happen. Okay, thanks Ben. Of course kiddo, now come on. It's another early day tomorrow. The muscles of every body he held were left sore after the long day, so he stretched out at the end of it, trying to rub some life back into them while he cleaned up and began packing away his clones, his student following suit. Their talk still lingered in Delaire's thoughts in the days since, pushing her to work all the harder in her efforts to train and learn, and with it, Ben himself was thinking about how best to help her grow. His original goal had been to get her to the 4th levels in both her crafting and enchanting after all, but since she'd already reached the 3rd and 2nd, there was no reason not to try and up the goal a bit more if that was what she herself wanted. It would pose no challenge to increase the speed she could think it more than he was already doing to let her enchant faster, and when he reached a certain point in her lessons as well, they could easily change to having her work more at once if he got Thera to make her a few clones of her own. That sort of thing was certainly an advantage most people wouldn't get after all, and would easily reduce her leveling time significantly if she even only got 2 to use. And she did ask if she could be turned into a demigod the other day, but as for that, definitely waiting for the results the gods get testing it first before I let anyone perform surgery on my little student. It was all things he needed to think about and consider. After all, with all of the knowledge he was making sure to give her, he was creating a foundation that would help her continue to grow, even if he wasn't around, an all too real possibility for the future. But even if that did come to pass, he wanted to help her do her best while he knew he'd be there to do it too. MMH will start on getting her to enchant faster tomorrow, and then all of the rest will leave for a bit later. For now though, his thoughts were broken with 2 coming through one of his gates, Thera and Mora back from their day, with one looking extra exhausted for it. Bad one I take it? An entire legion of soldiers managed to be ambushed in an expedition, and half of them came to me, Thera explained, practically collapsing against him. It was a very, very long day, but at least a few of the others got levels from it. With Mora looking light beside her, neither of them had to guess if he'd contributed, but Ben focused on rubbing Thera's back for what comfort it would bring. Her work at the hospitals she would go to had slowly been getting easier, but days like that would still pop up to make every healer's time worse, as they were forced to tear others from the jaws of death, leaving one of the greater resources on the planet perpetually stressed. But it's not like the day is over yet, and it's been a while since we've had a nice outing. Okay, why not? Well, "Want to come with me for a bit and take your mind off it? What did you have in mind? Seeing as how we have all of these conveniently placed mini-gates just lying around the shop, what say we go through one and find a nice market?" "Stay in sight, you too," Ben called out while Dallaire and Mora ran around. Really, it was more Dallaire dragging Mora with her as she explored, but he didn't want either getting lost. They'd chosen a market in Nair's lands by virtue of the fact that it was the newest location he could access from the shop, but there was plenty to enjoy about it. Back when he'd first come to train Nadi and Zilly, he hadn't taken the time to give it a look, but the environment created options for foods and ingredients he'd never normally get access to as he stopped at a stall to look at spice blends. Thera's arm linked with his as he picked out everything he wanted before tapping cards to exchange funds and storing bag after bag in his rings as he went. More ingredients meant more to experiment with as he cooked, only growing his range of recipes and what he could do with them while at the same time adding to what he could teach Dallaire as well. Cooking fell under the umbrella of crafting after all, and teaching her how to use a broader range of ingredients would only help her in the future. Which reminds me, I've been content to just give her some theory lessons on the topic, but I really should add some more hands-on lessons into the rotation for her. Man, so much to consider with having a student. I've definitely got to thank Falk again sometime. With the student in question having her eyes glued to a stall she'd found, Mora looking at her in curiosity more than what was being sold, while he and Thera made their way over to see what exactly had claimed Dallaire's attention. Ben giving a small laugh once he knew. "We'll take 3, please," he said to the person there, being handed 3 confections as money was exchanged as he looked at what seemed like a small pastry that itself had been candied, taking a bite to get an explosion of fruit flavor from it after as he snuck glances at the other two to see both Thera and Dallaire's eyes lighting up. If they both like it so much, I should be able to replicate it pretty easily. I'll have to think about what could make some other decent filling options later." "Is that really so enjoyable?" Mora asked them, still looking curious, with Dallaire being the one to answer. "It's so good, Mora. I could eat another 10. She glanced at Ben as she said it, the hint there, but he just laughed and ruffled her hair. "No can do, kiddo. You'll make yourself sick and ruin your appetite for whatever meal your mom is going to have waiting for you. If you like them so much, then we'll work on figuring out how we can make them ourselves later. Okay? MMH, okay?" Mora still looked curious, though, in a way that Ben couldn't help but feel bad for. His nature meant the boy was both freed from the chore of eating but also denied the pleasure of it, while the unique nature of his birth that had mingled the thought structures of both spirit and succubus meant he might have felt some impulse for it, even if he wasn't biologically equipped to carry it out. "But if he'd let me, I could let him experience what tasting things was like," Ben thought. "Connect to him and let him share my senses as I eat something, and then, no, I suppose that's not actually a good idea." He didn't know if the boy would like that or not, but if he did, then that would be a curse more than anything else. Mora was immortal by his very nature, only destined to die if he either somehow expended all of the mana that made up his body or else had his soul damaged to an extent where it couldn't be repaired, while Ben himself could only potentially have a few more centuries on the planet. So long as nothing killed him and he got the 2/3 tier awakenings, he wanted to expand his lifespan. Still though, however long he might live would be a blink of the eye against eternity, and if he showed Mora the joys of food but was the only one who could safely do so, then that meant the boy would have no way of re-experiencing it once Ben was gone. Something he couldn't help but think was a far sadder option than never getting to enjoy it at all. So many things to think about when raising a kid, and only more when you aren't even the same species, I guess. He thought with a sigh, wanting to give the boy what he could but knowing he needed to consider the child's future as well. Just one more thing to worry about. Once shopping was done, the 3 took Dallaire back home before returning themselves, finding Sonia already there with a book in hand while Ben went to prepare dinner with his new ingredients, tasting and testing as he went until he had something he was happy enough with to call the rest over to eat and talk about their days, indulging in each other's companies as the evening wore on until the meal was done, with Sonia turning to Mora once it was. Unauthorized use. This story is on Amazon without permission from the author. Report any sightings. Sweetheart, what do you say you join me for a few games until it's time for bed? All right. What do you want to play? You decide. I'll be with you in a second, she told him, letting the young spirit walk off to the living room as she turned back to the other 2, giving them a wink. And I don't think you both have had time to relax together for a while. I can look after him for a few hours if you want to spend some time together. The two looked at each other when she said it. It was true that they'd both been busy, with the closest they'd gotten to spending quality time together other than the little bit they had before falling asleep each night being their time in the last tower and when he'd been training her in enchanting, with neither event exactly being pleasant. They were both important enough to the world by that point, which meant they were both busy, and now with him having taken on an apprentice and Mora in their lives too, they were all the more so. But if Sonia's going to offer, we could go for a walk for a bit, he said, putting the idea out there. Stroll through town and enjoy the night for an hour or two? Yeah, that sounds really nice actually. Thanks, Auntie. Of course, you two kids have fun now. The setting sun left Stonewall quiet as they went, making their way through empty streets with only a few others out and about to be seen along the way, with Thera giving a content sigh as they did. You know, I really wish we could get a bit more time like this, she told him as she leaned her head against his arm. When did life get so busy? Ha! Was it ever not busy? Maybe not for you, you workaholic. I on the other hand feel like I used to get a lot more free time. Wonder how long it will be before I ever get regular days off again. Well, the war needs to end and whatever demons do make it onto the world would still need to be dealt with, so don't say never. Ahem. Some indeterminate time in the future? Just as bad. Ugh. If things ever do get better, I'm quitting everything. I'll materialize magic materials like Dad and live off that. Ha! Sounds like it would get dull. That's the thing about being able to make money out of thin air. If I get bored of it, I can just find something else to fill my time after I've filled my accounts. What about you? So bound and determined to get some heroic sacrifice, have you considered what you might want to do after? She sounded sad as she said it, the mood slipping through despite her intentions as she once more considered that Ben wanted to throw himself up against a god incomparable to any the world held while he moved to change it, picking her up in his arms and spinning around. What I want for the future, huh? Easy, he laughed. You and me enjoying the hell out of life, figuring out this whole raising a spirit thing and helping Delaire get to a point where she can awaken her skills, spending time with friends and family and making stuff the gods of this world never dreamed of. Nice and easy humble dreams. Ha! I don't think much of that was really humble. No? I think it all seems pretty manageable to me. Hell, it's mostly stuff I've done before anyway. I've shocked the gods, I've awakened people, and I've had a great time with you and everyone else I love. All that leaves is child-rearing to figure out, but we're kind of getting the hang of that, right? Maybe? Gods above, I sure hope so. Ha, well I say we are. He's more talkative than when he first joined us. Even if only a bit, and even if it's subtle, he lets us know how he feels. Just wait. Before you know it, he'll be as open as a book. Well, I hope, she smiled, continuing to walk until the edge of town came into view, an exit within the very wall that gave the place its name that led to her taking his hand to tug him along. Thera? You know, I've known you since you only had your first few levels, before you had any sort of magic, and now here you are. She laughed. But you know what I don't know right now? Most of what you do with your mana is materializing. What can you do when you're not burning it all away? He looked at where they were and then back to her, the public training ground right there to be used and empty of anyone else. If you're asking to end this romantic little walk with a spar, then is there any chance I can politely decline? Ha! Just show me something cool, you dolt. Cool, huh? Well, if that's all, then you've got it. She was right, most of his mana went to materializing or else shaping his work. He didn't often use spells to manipulate the environment around him unless he had to, but as a contender for his material manipulation and over 8,000 points of mana, he wanted to know too, so he poured his power into the ground, combining it with both his material sense and his extraction enhancement as the earth itself was torn apart and remade while it rose, the training ground being left with a fully stocked house in its center. Only one story, but it was enough. Thera's eyes gleamed while he caught his breath, dragging him along with her to look it over as she examined not only the building itself but appliances within, testing some lights and finding they worked with everything in there being enchanted. Okay. Color me impressed. Not my best work though. The enchantments are basic and the items are too. Nothing in here is above lower uncommon. Not your best work is going to be enough to leave everyone else in your field in tears. she laughed. Hell, my field too, unless you think other mages would somehow be unimpressed by this level of control and power? Well, I suppose when you put it that way. So want to see me try my best too? She asked playfully. I could try to see if I could carry the entire town for a bit, or maybe add a mountain range to the skyline. It would be good to mix things up every now and then. Nothing but trees and a few hills get stale. Ha, I'd comment on the environmental impact, but since the planet's ecosystem is already messed up beyond repair, I'll say go for it. If you do, there'll be new things living on it before the end of the week. True, but then I'd have to deal with all of the heart attacks seeing that would cause in the morning. This, however, should be perfectly fine. Her look turned mischievous as she pulled him close before the ground beneath their feet blasted up, leaving them at the top of a growing pillar as it shot into the sky above while he grabbed her back, taken completely off guard by the same speed she was reveling in until it finally slowed to a stop, giving them a view of everything around. There were lights to be seen down below, both Stonewall as well as some of the surrounding towns and villages, but the dark had fallen in full enough force that it wasn't much of a view, at least not that way. Looking up, though, the stars were out in full force, filling the sky as they stared up. You know, at least for humans on Earth, traveling through space was still basically impossible, Ben said. There was no way we'd get to another star in my lifetime, but here they're so in reach. Sounds like your world was better off then. Having everything so easy to reach is basically all of this planet's problems. Ha, you aren't wrong. Still, Quillith told me something similar before too. We have the whole galaxy open to us here, maybe even the whole universe beyond. Makes me wonder about what else is out there is all. Especially more spells. The gods of this galaxy had their hands on two powerful ones, but I don't even know what one does. There's got to be more out there too, and all of the other little mysteries this place has. I don't need a galaxy of ruined worlds. Plenty enough on the planet to enjoy, Thera told him. But for now, want to head back down? Yeah, sure. I guess it's a good time. And want to take the quick way? She asked him, looking playful again, but without Ben understanding what she meant until she nodded downwards. You have an incredible amount of mana now, Ben, and the skill to go with it. There's no reason you couldn't fly down under your own power. Is that accurate? When he thought about how much he could do with his magic, the mana and regen rates he held, and the skill he wielded it with, he realized she was actually almost certainly right, not that it changed his answer. Even if I can, trying to learn to fly going down instead of up feels like it might be bad for my long-term survival. Ha, alright, I'll bring us down, but one of these days you should see how far you can take us by cart if you can. Save me the trouble driving for once. Well, let's wait for my mana to rise just a little more before we get to that point. As the demigod of growth and gain, I'm sure it won't be long. Gods above, I knew that was going to go to your head, she told him, shaking hers as she brought them down and taking the pillar she'd pulled up with them. You aren't humble enough to be able to handle a title like that. What are you talking about? Not only am I humble, I might be the most humble person on the planet. Why, I deserve titles calling me as much, and maybe even a job or two to go with it. Keep dreaming, she laughed, taking his arm as they touched down. Now come on, we shouldn't keep Ani waiting much longer. I'm going to need you first. Huh? Myriad, what's up, and is it really so important that it needs to interrupt my first little date in ages? Unfortunately, I have no one else I can turn to, and you conveniently have your overpowered lover. It's an emergency, Ben. The demi-demons are all going to die. How many today? Toltho asked, trying to keep the weariness from his face as he asked his kin. 45 so far, but there's still hunters out. An answer he was expecting, even if it still left him with a headache. 45 today, 32 the one prior, a high of 67 before that, with sightings and attacks working out to within that range consistently since their god had told them that the second wave had started, with the demons they once raised and corralled flooding the whole of the world along with their small part of it too. They killed all they'd see. With what they'd learned, both of what those beasts truly were as well as their own relation to them, they could do nothing else, but days of endless battle had them wearing thin. There was always more to find, always more to kill, and now that they knew just how little their home was compared to the wider world, the implications of it were staggering considering just how many they'd see. It was to the point that hunting felt almost wasteful. They tried to eat what they could, but it left more meat than they needed to go around, and while the flesh of those beasts made for a decent enough lure for hungry members of their own insatiable kind, disposing of all of the rest was burdensome in its own way. But it has to be done, he thought with a tinge of exhaustion, sending up a small prayer to his God and looking forward to the next chance he'd get to speak with the cube for all the ways it would ease his mind. For all the changes that had come with it when the dark truth of their existence had been revealed, Myriad had been the most blessed one, showing them the love and compassion that they never realized a god should have been giving from any of their old ones, those evil deities who had both created the demidemons as a whole for their own selfish desires and through that act, helped doom the world. No, unlike them, Myriad was truly worthy of faith, giving generously and strengthening them all in the process with both his blessing and his skill, granting them all a new way to experience the world and deepen their interactions with each other too. The treatment was incomparable and the greatest gift they could have hoped to receive, building the faith he received on trust and love instead of the fear that powered what they used to give. But as his mind wandered to their revered deity, the one with him lingered, taking an apologetic tone. And there's one more thing. Yes. The four were the ones to discover and take on the largest group we saw today of 20. All lived, but there were injuries again. A sigh finally couldn't be kept from escaping his lips as Toltho shook his head. Thank you for letting me know. I'll go talk to them. With a small nod, the other left, giving Toltho just a moment of peace to breathe before getting up. No matter how he felt about it, he was the acting leader of his people, which left him with responsibilities to bear, so leaving his home, he went out into the village to find a few of the bigger points of stress it housed. Looking around as he did, he tried to take it in for what good it held. Their village wasn't large by any stretch, but it had changed completely in the last few years, with sturdy homes to live in now that they weren't being moved constantly to escape the eyes of the world's gods, and a field where they farmed crops for themselves instead of just gathering. But more than any of that was the people within it. In the past, the direction of their lives was simple. They lived for the sake of their gods, doing what they could to sustain themselves so that they might give all the faith they were able with every hour they had, only stopping to hunt and sleep, with the ones they'd worshipped feeling like they tolerated that fact more than they actually understood it. Now though, things were different. Despite the dangers of the world around them, children were at play and some adults were even joined in, with the sounds of music coming from others who practiced in their leisure. The skills any one of them would hold had grown too, being shown that so many more existed than any of them had thought too, which made different forms of training easier. With access to the cards, it was no longer a matter of fumbling in the dark to find which magics any of them were suited for, and with books on topics they never had before, it was easy for their talents to blossom as they worked, making surviving just that little bit easier for everyone there. Well, almost everyone. He told himself as he let himself into another building where the ones who'd decided to devote themselves to the healing arts were at work, treating the injured who'd returned after facing down the biggest crowd of the day by themselves. Those who'd once stood by his side as the leading figures of the villages, brought down by their gods and their faith with the orders they'd been given in the past. The other four who, like himself, had once acted as representatives of the forbidden gods who'd created their race. Neither he nor them said anything at first, with the others waiting for him to talk while he inspected their wounds. None would die, but the scars were building up. The limits of their healers' abilities meant that the process wasn't perfect, though with how much those patients were putting their bodies through, they were certainly getting the practice. Guilt and shame weren't things easily fixed. Under their gods' orders, they'd begun the slaughter of their own kind, which was enough to separate them from the other villagers, but the anger and hate of the rest of their kind had faded with time. After all, what was the point? They had been as misled as anyone else, and it was all the more clear that nothing that anyone else felt for them was a drop compared to the hatred they felt for themselves, leaving them to travel their self-destructive road to repentance. "You all can't keep this up," he finally said, getting an empty smile from Plet in exchange. "Ah, but we all know it's for the best. Someone needs to be culling any that come too close, and it makes such good practice for the healers too. Why, I think it was just yesterday one got a new level, a blessing for the village all around." Toltho just shook his head. "I can't make you forgive yourselves, but at least understand that you're all more useful to the rest of us alive." If you really want to help, then do it by living as long as you can and contributing all you can. Whatever lingering feelings there might be in others, I hold nothing against you, and neither does our God. You know that's all that truly matters. None of them responded, none of them cared. Their new God was not a judgmental one, but that still left the judgment they placed on themselves once the truth of their existence had come out, leaving only the reality of what they'd done and the weight of their sin that no amount of forgiveness from others could lift from their shoulders. They'd nearly slaughtered their people because the ones they'd worshipped demanded it, and that was something that would never be forgotten. What matters to him and to yous are two different things, Plet said as he looked away. Pay us no mind, Toltho. We won't die so easily. I'd believe that if you'd put in the slightest amount of effort to preserving yourselves. You were all dragged here again, I take it? Not going to use your own life magics to heal yourselves. Of the original priests, he alone was the only one who wielded death magic, with the other four holding life, but each and every time he saw them, not one used that power for themselves despite their skill in it. Every time, it was up to the others to find them when they got back and force them to be healed, when it only ever became more and more clear that they had no desire for it themselves. With it being a question none of them wanted to answer either, the group fell to silence, leaving him to wonder if there even was anything they could do until a distant sound changed things. A scream, off in the distance but still clearly close enough to be from the village, had him and the other four on their feet and running without a word being spoken as they tore through the streets where the sounds of movement came from, letting them see that their day still wasn't yet over, with a new group of at least 20 demons attacking the village proper. To the best of their abilities, but with limited success. Nearly every member of the village had experience hunting, and even as some of the more powerful among them, the rest of their people weren't weak, with the ones who'd gotten there first already drawing blood. Bringing one demon down at the same group of old priests joined the fray, not needing to say a word after all of those years, as they all moved as one. While 3 went to help in areas that looked like they were struggling, Toltho and Plet went to the biggest, seeing a beast that towered twice their size that didn't seem to have any magic to attack with, instead just swinging its arms in powerful blows to throw anything that came close enough away that made it harder for others to deal with as it shrugged off the magic attacks it fell under with ease, looking to be the greatest challenge there. Plet took the front, drawing its eye as he ran forward to challenge it head-on, ducking under one swing to get in close to attack while Toltho moved to the monster's back, staying hidden with his invisibility with an attack of his own, and at the same time it reacted to the one before it. Squeezing down on Plet instead of lashing out, Toltho struck, his claws gouging out chunks of flesh at the beast's neck, and forced it to lash out in reaction, barely clipping him as he tried to dodge and leaving a cut running down his chest as blood leaked out. One injury given though, Plet got another, reaching up with his own hand to slash the other side of the demon's throat and having far more success with his own escape, no matter how rough rushing in had left him. The demi-demon was left with broken ribs and a wet cough, but it was their victory in the end as the giant they fell took a single, intimidating step forward before collapsing, the blood loss too great for its large body as it died with a single word on its lips. Abominations. Wise ones are always a pain to deal with. Plet spat, a glob of blood splashing against the ground when he did as the two observed the surroundings. The rest of them had been killed while they'd fought as more villagers had gathered to come and help, ending that small invasion. Looks like we didn't do a good enough job clearing the area today. We'll go back and... He trailed off as Toltho raised a hand, his eyes closed in concentration as he listened to the world around him, past the celebration of his people to experience something farther. Pounding. A sound in the distance that had started off small but only grew with every passing second until he could feel the tremors in the earth beneath his feet, making his eyes shoot open as he yelled out around him. On guard! We aren't done yet. A warning that was barely even needed by that point. The fastest of what was to come was already running through the trees with another dozen demons coming into sight, but they all knew it wasn't going to be all of them. A dozen wouldn't shake the earth itself, and with his senses telling him there were hundreds more following, he knew it was about to become a very long day. Ben was linked to Thera's mind as they flew, increasing the rate she'd think to let them go even faster than the insane speeds she would normally take them at as the ground below passed by in a blur, breaking the hours it should have taken them to get so far out into the untamed lands to merely half of one, with only a couple minutes left until their destination would be in sight. all while Ben's heart twisting in worry as they went. Myriad had told him that the attacking demons could be measured in the hundreds as more and more came out through the woods to the small settlement, forcing everyone there to fight to survive as they desperately held on. Their shared God promising reinforcements if they could only live a little longer, with Ben and Thera being the only ones he could call on so quickly to know there'd be any hope of them arriving in time to save some lives, with a scene of carnage left down below when they finally made it. What had once been a village was now a ruin, with nothing much of what they or the demi-demons had made left to be seen. The houses were flattened and the fields were destroyed, with the trees surrounding them knocked down as well, leaving a grand view of the blood and destruction that replaced it. All around were bodies. Most of them demons, but plenty of demi-demons too. With the few of Myriad's believers, he could see still standing looking on their last legs as they circled their young, elderly, and injured for what protection they could give from the surrounding horde of monsters, each ready to fight to their last breath to protect what they could for as long as they could, in the hope that the help their God promised would come soon, with Ben making a request to ensure that would happen. Thera, petrify them. She felt the details of what he wanted in his thoughts as she did what he asked, not just casting her spell on the demons below but the demi-demons too. The two groups were both too close and intermingled for her to pick out which ones to attack in any selective manner, and it held the dual benefit of freezing the injured in stasis, giving a chance they might be saved after. Under her power, flesh turned to stone in an instant, but it was focused enough at its center that the demons closer to the edges weren't turned, which was where Ben directed his attention next, and with his minds moving at their maximum potential, bringing the world to a standstill, he attacked as well. He had more space in his rings than he could ever hope to efficiently fill, which left more than enough room for something simple as thousands of iron balls were all brought out at once and shot off with enough force behind them to drain his mana reserves at a speed that made reacting to them an impossibility, as every demon in his sight had their skulls pierced at once, killing them before they even realized they'd been attacked as they collapsed to the ground, letting him turn his focus to the heavens above. Is there any more I'm not seeing? Got it. Thera, can you draw anything else out? Can do. Mana already moving, her dark magic came out, charmed to her will as every other demon still in the area was drawn to it, pulling them into the clearing despite what happened before she altered the ground beneath their feet, leaving it thin for them to sink in before crushing each one, breaking them under her power and leaving the forest empty as the two of them dropped to the ground to survey the damage. It was clear that in the small village of roughly 200, 15 of the demi-demons were dead, with far more critically injured, and the sight left him to curse himself. He and the gods had decided it would be better to leave them to live in the untamed lands after they'd been found for all of the troubles that could have been caused by introducing them to the wider world right when the invasion points had been revealed, but with the second wave past, it was clear it was long past the time when that might have been the safer option for them. Even if still dangerous, the inhabited lands were patrolled and protected, with the emptier parts of the world being left to employ the patrols and expeditions that would be sent out to cull the numbers there, meaning it was where the greatest volume of demons still lived. A stupid decision. He scorned himself. A stupid, irreversible decision. One more bit of guilt to contend with, but not one that would help. He took a deep breath before turning to Thera. Let's unpetrify them one by one to start treating. I'll prepare some biomass. This book is hosted on another platform. Read the official version and support the author's work. The fact that he couldn't do more than create something for them all to eat only made his guilt dig deeper, but no matter how small the part, it would help, and with the plan made they got started, doing what little they could. Under Thera's power, none of the injured were lost, even if the deaths couldn't be undone. No matter the severity, by taking things slow and working with care, every life that could have been saved had been, with the survivors huddling together after the event while Toltho stood by those who were lost, Ben walking to his side. I'm sorry. If we'd done things differently, then it never would have come to this. The words felt meaningless compared to the loss of life, but Toltho just gave him a sad smile. Ben, the two of you have saved us all again. There's nothing to apologize for. Death is a fact, but all who survived owe you our lives. It didn't feel like it as he looked down to those who were lost. All people he'd seen and exchanged a few words with before, with two of them standing out more than others. The former priests? Kaz and Plet. All four of them have been in such a hurry to die, but it was those two who finally had their wish granted. the demi-demon said, shaking his head. Still, they can go proud. Whatever guilt they felt, their sacrifice saved lives. Would they have found some peace right at the end? I doubt it, dying without even knowing if the people you were dying for would even be saved. He felt the negativity of it all claw at him, but he did his best to control it. There would be a time and place, but there were other matters to deal with first, with the main one being what to do now. Sure, the demi-demons could rebuild their homes, but he didn't actually think that was the best choice. It would just leave them where they currently were, alone and vulnerable. No, it's time for them to come out to join the rest of the world. Myriad, you're around, right? Okay, cool, because there's something we need to figure out right now. Toltho, it's clear it's too dangerous to leave you all here, so right now, what we need to do is figure out how to safely move you all to the wider world. I'm specifically thinking my home in Stonewall. Toltho looked back at the rest of his people, hesitating as he asked the obvious question to him. And will that be safe? Kind of. More than out here at least, Ben sighed. There will be some minor problems, Dash. Like the very nature of our very existence? Honestly, yeah. But I can think of a way to make it work. Frankly, you only have a couple traits that resemble demons. Other races in the world have purple eyes and red scales too, and the fact that the second is only on your limbs is a big plus since there's no furry demons as far as I've seen, so it's just a matter of making sure nobody here reveals it. A task easier said than done. Even the children know what we are. All it might take is a few careless words, and then what sort of trouble will we face? I honestly don't know, Toltho, but I at least have an idea for that. Myriad, this is where you come in, buddy. The only way I can really see to make this work is to place a covenant on them. Can you do it? The same sort of restriction that every trial and tower held to keep mortals from sharing the challenges they contained. It was the only thing he could think of to ensure the secret of their nature stayed hidden no matter what, with Myriad being in agreement. It's the best I can come up with right now, but it's not just that either. We'd need them to not be able to reveal their race on their cards either, and on that note, I know the Adventurers Guild can read some card information. Can it give away a person's race, or can any other governing bodies detect that in some way? Okay, then this works. We're covered. Myriad clarified. But you both believe it should be done? Toltho asked. I do. Then I will do it, and I will tell the others as well. All right, we'll have to prepare to set up then. Myriad, since Sakhel and her party are aware of what the demi-demons are, make it abundantly clear that if any of them mention a word of it, then I'm breaking Sko's legs, but it would be preferable if you could get his and Raelia's gods to place covenants on them too. I guess maybe try that angle before threatening them for me. And also wake Sakhel up too, because we're putting her to work. I'm going to need Cecily for sure, and it's probably time I finally meet Stonewall's Mayor too, so get your oracle to go explain that there's going to be almost 200 new residents in town soon, and that we'll be there in a few short hours. It didn't take long to convince the demi-demons. Their god believed it was for the best, and so did Ben, with both of their words carrying weight with them. Regardless of how he viewed the deaths that had taken place as a product of his own lack of thought and consideration, to them he was still their savior, someone who had appeared when their old gods had betrayed them and argued for their fate to all of the ones who really ruled the world and who had come once more in their time of need. Death was a part of life, but those who lived were grateful. It was when they were all told the details and had given their consent that Myriad began placing restrictions on them, creating a small bit of room for him and Thera to do what they'd need to next. Manage the transportation. The way there had been quick and messy, with Thera basically making a giant stone cup to carry the two of them, but the way back would need more care considering how many they were taking along with a sizable group being both children and elders, and with that in mind they worked together to create a solution. While Thera felt the earth around her and ripped what she needed from it, Ben gave her a design to build, something both long and sleek to hold so many while gently gliding through the air and ending with something that almost looked like a plane, only missing a roof to leave a view as they went on their way out of the woods around them. You going to be okay flying all of us for so long? Ben asked her. This is a lot more than usual. I should be fine. If it starts feeling risky at all, I'll just take us down and get you to top up my mana for a bit. Okay, sounds like a plan. In that case, everyone, if there's anything you want to grab, get it quickly, but otherwise come on in. With how their village had been left in ruins, there really wasn't much to take, but with some taking a few minutes to look around first, it wasn't long until they parted that land, up in the air and on the way home. The demi-demons watched in awe as they flew, getting to see the forest below pass by so quickly, when up until then they'd always been limited by the strength of their own 2 feet, and that feeling didn't disappear as the hours passed, only growing as they reached the edge of the gate city they'd need, being brought down and carefully led through it under both Ben and Thera's watchful eyes, getting to see them gawk at the strange new sights but mainly making sure none got lost as they went from there to the magic towers, passing through to the guild and finally arriving in Stonewall. They'd gotten looks along the way but none that had caught on to their heritage, only curiosity at the large group passing through of a race no one immediately recognized, with the dark streets of Stonewall being the final step. It was so late that the rising sun had to be no more than an hour away, but that didn't mean they'd get any rest soon with work still to do as they made it to the edge of town where Sakhel and Cecily waited, the latter letting out a low whistle. "So you really did bring an entire village with you, huh?" "Yeah, it's a long story, but shouldn't there be one more person here? Pretty sure I asked to meet the mayor too, given we're about to alter the town and all." That she only shrugged. "Not like you haven't done it before, and when I tried to get him he just delegated to me again. Seriously feels like this guy just doesn't want to meet me at this point. You do have a rather unique reputation, don't mind it. For now, what are you going to do? If you stumble upon this narrative on Amazon, be aware that it has been stolen from Royal Road. Please report it." "God, so much," he sighed. "To start, I'm going to mark out the area. Cecily, these are the demis, worshippers of Myriad. Mingle a bit while I do this." While Thera would be doing most of the heavy lifting magically, there was planning that needed to be done for where things would be placed while he walked away to mark it out, pulling mithril from his rings and enchanting pieces of it with different colored lights to begin showing what all needed to be done. Stonewall's wall needed to be partially torn down and rebuilt, which was the most obvious issue, but the ground in the surrounding area needed to be packed down and leveled too, and roads needed to be added and marked. Add in the houses that needed to be built at the end of it all for each family, and what that meant was that there was plenty of work still to do. Once he was finished though, Thera's turn was up as she reached out, extending her magic all around before pressing down evenly on everything, changing the landscape as hills vanished in an instant and continued down further until Ben waved her to stop. They couldn't have it fall so deep that it would flood when it rained, and if any issues popped up then they'd work to solve them later. Next came the roads themselves, being made as she felt the stones hidden within the dirt and gathered them into the marked places, smoothing them out to create walking paths. With those made, the tasks turned to housing as more stone and earth were pulled from regions beyond where she'd already worked, letting Ben create models of buildings in her mind that she put together, leaving only the final task that would be in her domain as she took the town wall and brought it to life, the stone structure breaking free of itself to slither across the land and wrap around the new portion of land before she once more grabbed from the world around her to extend the rest, reconnecting with the rest of town with the extension completed, letting her slump on Ben's shoulder. "Other than the time I actually fell into mana exhaustion, I think this is the closest I've ever come. It feels like you have tens of thousands of points left." "Your point? Incredible jealousy, I guess? MMH. Well, now it's my turn to feel some of that, so go show off your own strong suits already." "Ha, you got it. I guess I have the benefit of being able to take things a bit slow in comparison." There was plenty he needed to make them all, but given what every one of the demi-demons had just been put through, he focused on helping them get the main thing they'd need, namely rest, as he used what he knew of plant biology to materialize fibers woven into thick bedding, giving them all something they could use to sleep in for the time as he moved from house to house to make sure there was enough for all of them, stealing mana when he had to but getting it done just before the sun rose, letting him turn back to address them all. "All right everyone, you've all been through a lot and there's plenty still to do, but for now, take an hour or two to try and sleep. I'll be back then myself to help out more, but there's some things I need to set up first, so until then please try not to go off exploring. I don't think any of you will be in any danger, but this is a new environment and I want to help you all get settled a bit first. Now, Sakhel, could you do me the favor of hanging out in the area until I'm back to help if they need anything, and to make sure everyone here is safe?" "Of course, you can count on me." "Thank you. And Cecily, could you swing by again later? There's more I want to get your help with, but I want to get them all settled first." "All right. I could use a small nap first too, so I'll come back when I wake up." Fantastic, which means all I have to do is talk with the gods. Make a whole bunch. Figure out how I'm going to incorporate Delaire's lessons into everything I have to do today on top of all of my other tasks and, ugh, I'll figure out the rest as I go. For now, you all heard me. Try to get what sleep you can, but otherwise. You all know Sakhel, so if you have any emergency, come out and ask her. She's here to help. He got nods as he said it, with many feeling the exhaustion catching up with them from the long day that not even the experience of watching a village grow around them could rid them of, and after a few bows from the group they slowly moved to their new homes, with Toltho staying last. If it's all the same, I'd like to stay to talk with the Oracle for a bit. I won't stop you, but are you sure? Today's going to be busy too. It would be better to get whatever rest you can while you can. I'm sure. There's plenty of time to sleep tomorrow. For now, it's better I try and get a head start on learning to help the rest wherever I can. All right, you heard him, Sakhel. Looks like you've got some company. With that done though, he felt his own exhaustion catching up to him while he and Thera walked home. Looking forward to the brief bit of time he'd have to close his eyes and talk to the gods. With the first rays of the sun out once they were at their doorstep, Ben's mind was still full of all he'd have to do before he stopped, banging his head against the door with the new problem that came to his thoughts. You okay there, Ben? Just realized we have a young little resident in town who'll be able to see the system info for the demis if he ever runs into one. Thera's face fell as he said it, with the new issues obvious once it was pointed out. Mora would be able to see the demi-demons race through the system information bound to their souls, which meant it wasn't something they could just ignore. Even if he was being secretive in his use of magic, if he thought they were a threat and acted on it discreetly, with the power he held, it was all but certain they'd die, leaving Ben to sigh. We'll have to talk to him before anything else then. Their particular struggles with guardianship were enough to almost make him laugh. Having no choice but to consider the potential whims of what might as well have been a child god for all the power Mora held, but in the end what it came down to was as simple as trying to explain and instill a sense of right and wrong, and after the long night they'd been through, neither of them wanted to wait as they let themselves in before knocking on the boy's door, getting a small surprise as he came to open it himself instead of calling them in. Welcome back. Sorry we were so late, Thera told him, wrapping him in a hug. We had a bit of an emergency that we need to talk to you about. Mind if we come in? All right. They moved to sit on the edge of his bed. Mora squeezed between the two, with Thera taking the lead. So Mora, you are aware of the demons and the invasion going on, aren't you? They had never outright asked, but given that the boy's age could be measured in months, they had to be sure. Neither doubted that Vividus had been clear about it in whatever sort of education she'd given him, of course, but the extent mattered, with Mora tensing up before nodding as Ben took over. Well, the thing is, there's a few complications about it that the average person might not know, but there's a pretty good chance you'll stumble into a bit of it when you go through town. It's the reason we were so late getting back, but if you see something, we'd really like you to keep it a secret with us. Okay. The boy's tension melted just a little, traded for curiosity as he perked up. What is it? Meeting each other's eyes, Ben couldn't help but sigh as he covered the explanation, feeling the weight of the need to properly convey it all. On this world, deep in the untamed lands, a group called the Forbidden Gods created a hybrid race between demons and one of the native animals to make themselves a new species to get faith from, called demi-demons. We're not going to go into why those gods did it. They shouldn't have, and they've been punished for it. But what matters is the demi-demons themselves. They aren't like demons, they're people who've been mistreated and just want to live, but there's no guarantee that everyone will understand that if word gets out, so that's why we're bringing this up now. Whenever you see any, don't bring up their name to anyone. Okay? As far as we and everyone else in town is going to be concerned, their species is called the Demis, and they're a group of believers of Myriad who've been evacuated here after their village was destroyed. Heck, that last part is absolutely true. It's what kept us so long, but what's important is not saying anything that might put them in danger. Can you do that? So you aren't killing them? Mora asked, looking surprised while Thera waved her hands. No, absolutely not. I'll take you to meet some today, Mora. I don't think we're going to do a long one at the hospital since this popped up, and they're all nice people. I'm sure you'll be able to get along. What about demons then? Incomparable, Ben told him. Demi-demons are people, but real demons are basically monsters with intelligence. They don't have mercy or empathy or anything that would let us reason with them. Whatever blood the two share, they couldn't be more different. I see. The answer seemed to make him slip back further into himself, and again Ben and Thera shared a look, with her taking the initiative that time. Mora, is there something about that answer that bothered you? He shook his head. No, it's fine. If you just got back though, don't you both need to sleep? Well, yes, but we can talk a bit longer if there's anything you're worried about. We can talk later. Get some rest, I'll be fine. Okay. Well, we're just going to have a small nap. We'll be out in an hour. Okay? Love what you're reading? Discover and support the author on the platform they originally published on. Okay. Picking up that he wanted to be alone, the two went to their own room and laid down, Thera saying what they were both thinking. Something about that seems like it could have gone a lot better. Yeah. Maybe we'll have to try and push that a little bit soon. They'd been trying to give him space to open up to them on their own, but the boy seemed bothered when they'd left. Whatever was on his mind, not a concern he was going to openly share, but that was one more concern among many, and to start easing a few of them, Ben closed his eyes, forcing his mind to his god's realm. All right. I've let down the demi-demons and I'm struggling to connect to the kid I'm trying to raise, which means today is the perfect day for bad news in general, so hit me. You didn't let down the demi-demons, Ben, Myriad told him. If anything, it's the opposite. You helped save them again. Thank you. 15 are dead. Instead of all of them. I should have thought to move them to Stonewall before something like this could happen. No, I should have. I'm their god. And I'm their apostle. And just one man. Ignoring the thousands of things I can think at the same time. Nobody can think of everything. You have your priorities, and neither I nor they hold anything against you for not moving them sooner. We made the best choice we could when their existence was discovered, and now we're trying to make the best choice we can again. Feel good about those you helped save. It matters just as much as the ones you couldn't. Great advice. Thanks, but I'd rather get all of my misery, self-loathing, and despair out all at once. How healthy of you, the cube sighed, the sarcasm thick in his voice. And given that, Ben went on, ignoring his god. I have a question for you. How are things going? Aside from what my believers just went through, I suppose I'm doing fairly well, all things considered. Okay, that's nice, but I was more talking about with the war. It's been a few months since the points opened up. How are things going now that we've passed the second wave? Well, all things considered, I'd say better than we'd hoped. Genuinely? There's positives and negatives, but honestly, more positives than I'd say any of us have dared to dream. For one, civilization as we know it hasn't collapsed yet, which is a big win as far as how the majority of known worlds ended up, which is really the biggest plus any of us could have hoped for, and our people are powerful enough to continue facing the challenges that crop up. Hell, it was recently that it was confirmed that another one of the demon contenders was found and handled before they could become a problem. I'm comfortable saying that hope is alive and well. Okay, and as nice as that is, I'm not feeling positive enough to want to hear anything so cheery. What's the bad news? You really can be such a downer, you know that? I think being a downer is kind of the natural state of this world. We're all lucky I don't give in to my defeatist attitude more often. So, what is there to worry about out there? Ugh, nothing you can't expect. No matter how well we're doing, the gods who witnessed the start of the third wave still aren't confident it's enough, and people are still dying every day. There's been more than a few occasions that villages have been found completely eradicated too, with how it's happening seeming like it might be the work of another contender. Yeah, why? It's clear it's just one doing it. The damage to the ones I'm talking about is basically non-existent, and the bodies look untouched when they're found, like they've had the vitality ripped out of them and nothing else. There's probably a couple others too, but we have groups looking for them to the best of our abilities, but no matter how far we've come and how well we do, I'm still not confident. Ben sat down on the floor when his god said it, staring up above, lost in his thoughts with the world's fate circling his head. Am I doing enough? He wondered, with his god giving a small laugh at the idle thought. You're doing more than 99% of the world. Hell, maybe even more than 100%. When I watch you work, it sure feels like it sometimes. But am I really directing my efforts in the right places? He sighed. I've become a pretty good mage dash. Describing yourself like that would be a psychological blow to every other mage on the planet. So maybe I should be focusing that way instead. Maybe I should be going out, overfilling my soul to hunt whatever demons I can to kill all I can on top of everything else. You don't have enough hours in the day to add that unless you're going to stop giving your time to the people you love. No, I still have to live, he muttered before flopping over to his stomach. It's just hard. You're only one person. There was only ever going to be so much you could do, Ben, and if you'll give my opinion any weight, no matter how powerful you may now be, the things you're making are changing the world. What you're doing is plenty. Yeah. I just wish I could do more. They sat in silence for a moment, Ben finally breaking it for what he really wanted to know. Myriad. Yes, Ben. I have a question for you. Can you be honest with me? Of course. How many of the demi-demons chose to merge into you when they died? It was 13. More than I expected. Despite the differences in how I treated them compared to the forbidden gods, they were raised and bred to be devout. Getting an option like that was an honor in their eyes. Good. And the two who didn't? The two former priests, Kaz and Plet. They wanted to, but, in the end, they couldn't forgive themselves for what their old gods made them do. I see. Myriad. Yes. How did the other 13 feel when they died? Ben, I can say this as one who became them. They harbored no animosity. Not to me and not to you. I see. Adding the last item to one of his rings before the shop's door flew open, Dallaire finally arrived for the day, looking bright and cheery as she did. Morning, Ben. Morning, kiddo. We've got something a little different on the agenda today, so we won't be in the shop this time. No? Where are we going? She asked him, her eyes alight with curiosity as she looked to the mini-gates he kept there, getting a laugh as he went over to ruffle her hair. Not anywhere so far. Some new people moved into town today. We're going to help them get set up. Come on. He lifted her up onto his shoulders before walking through the still quiet streets. Plenty of the town still asleep when they arrived to see the new extension, with Toltho and Sakhel both there and both of them already at work. In and around each house, Sakhel was using her magic, creating small gardens for the demi-demons to pull from and enjoy with both flowers and food crops growing in the areas she'd already worked, leaving Ben to wonder if she'd gone back to grab the seeds she'd need when he'd originally called for her before shaking his head. It was just as possible she always kept some on her, it didn't matter. What did was the work she was putting in for their new townsfolk as he joined their side, putting Dallaire down. Looks like you've kept busy since I've been gone. It looks nice. Thanks, I should have them all done in another hour or two, she said, looking content. Toltho's taste tested, so as long as there's no unexpected reactions. Everything I'm growing should be safe for them to eat too. Not sure how I feel about getting him to be a poison taster so soon into moving. Someone had to do it, the man in question said, giving Dallaire a curious look with Ben taking note. Toltho, this is Dallaire, my apprentice. Dallaire, this is Toltho, the leader of a village that was dedicated to my god. Today, we're going to help his people set up a bit, and on that note, is anyone else awake already? Doesn't seem to be. I thought they'd all have a lot more trouble getting some rest after all that happened, but I suppose yesterday just took more out of everyone than we'd expected. Alright, that makes things simple. We'll start with your home. Sakhel. You get to keep on keeping an eye out here for anyone who wanders out. Can do. Awesome. In that case, let's get started. He led both the demi-demon and his apprentice to the one empty home that had been built, finding it to be as barren as when it had been made only a few hours before, since Toltho had yet to use it, but quickly changed that as Ben pulled materials and items out of his rings, already making a mess of the space as he handed Dallaire some tools. Alright, kiddo. I've already got things cut to size to make a bed frame, so you're on assembly while I work out here on some other stuff. If you need me, then just let me know. Okay. She was already working at it, screwing and joining pieces so they'd fit together while Ben covered the rest of the house to do what work he could as things were built up and assembled, creating seating and tables where they would fit by shaping what he'd brought with his magic to make quick work of it. Adding magic items from there as cold boxes and cookware and lights were created for amenities, and then rugs and mats and more as well. There were 1,000 little things a home needed, but at the very least, he could help create the more important stuff for one, with any gaps being a problem that could be filled in the future whenever they were noticed. What mattered then was really one thing only: making sure each home was comfortable. You could be reading stolen content. Head to the original site for the genuine story. It didn't take long for him to finish, but when he did, he found Toltho looking in awe at him before the others spoke up. "I knew you were powerful, Ben, but I didn't realize it was so much so. Are my people really so weak in comparison to the rest of the world we've been hiding from?" "You're not, don't worry. I'm just, well, maybe a little obsessive about self-improvement at times and very dedicated to my passions. Actually, since you hold a second-tier skill, Toltho, by the standards of the world, you can consider yourself exceptional. All the more so since you achieved it without taking a job. You should be proud." "If you say so, I do. You'll understand more when you start interacting with the rest of the town a bit more, but actually, if nobody else is awake yet, let's talk about that." "What?" "How we're going to integrate you all with the rest of the town." "Ben, you've got company," Sakhel called out as he worked, finishing up his 10th house now that the others had begun waking up as he walked out, finding Cecily waiting off to the side while Thera and Mora had arrived, letting Ben go over to his girlfriend. "You're here sooner than expected. After all of that, working today was a write-off, and luckily, it wasn't so bad when I went to tell them that to guilt me into staying. So now that I'm here, what should I do?" Okay, just gotta gather everyone, but first, Mora. Delaire's taking a break to meet and play with some of the other kids. Think you could do me a favor and help her out? Try and make them feel comfortable." "All right, I can." "Thanks, kiddo," Ben smiled, hoping that it would help the boy make a few more friends before he turned his focus to Toltho. "And can you gather the others? There's a fair bit to go through." "I will. Just a moment." It didn't take long until he was surrounded by a crowd, letting him call out to all of those around him. "All right, everyone. I know this is still all new to you, but in an effort to get you all accustomed to life here and the town itself, you actually need to become a part of it, so that's what we're going to try and sort out here and now. I know you all had your own tasks you do in your village. You'll find things here to be largely the same as well. We just need to figure out where you'll all fit in, but for now we'll make it simple. Any of you with life or light magic, you'll be going with Thera. We have a clinic in town, a place for healers to meet, but they can always use more hands, and that will be a great way for you to meet the other townsfolk and get along. Thera, you think you can make that work if you introduce them all? There's going to be over 70 of them, which I know is a lot, but I have a few other ideas to make that work. I think Drari is going to cry with joy at the idea they could be overstaffed for once. That work. As for everyone among you all who'd act as hunters and gatherers, you'll all be going along with Cecily to join the Adventurers Guild, an institution that's pretty devoted to those two tasks. Cecily, if you could help them through the process, divide them into groups based on where their skills lie, and get some veteran adventurers to join each party for the first couple weeks to help teach them about the role and area and what's expected of them, I'd appreciate that too. All right, but how many of them are we talking about here? Over 100. This really was a village of hunter-gatherers. It was an answer that left her frowning as she thought. Usually the issue is having too few adventurers, which is why it's so easy to join, but you're talking about a huge amount here. I don't think there's enough quests to keep them all busy. And I'll solve that too, but later. With those groups done, the rest are going to be with me as we walk through town today. The goal for you guys is going to be getting you all acquainted with how things work here and to try and figure out a place you might fit yourselves. But once everyone is done, you should all come back and talk together about how you're going to live your lives here. It was a lot, there was no denying that, but that sort of thing was never going to be easy. He'd just need to work on the population problem when he finished helping for the day, and from there they split, the three groups going off to figure out how to fit the demi-demons into the wider world. Ben, what exactly are you doing to my guild? Cecily asked as she came out near the day's end, after all of the work that he'd already dropped on her to find him building supports at the building's side, with him looking innocent as he answered. Just some simple renovations. You know, you should typically ask about doing those sorts of things first. But if I did that, I would have been in some trouble if you'd said no. She looked at him blankly for a moment after that answer before shaking her head. Why are you renovating the guild? It just needs a new room if I'm going to solve the population problem is all, he explained as he spent his mana, bringing down part of the old wall to the surprise of everyone inside before creating the new space it was attached to. Speaking of, come on and give me a hand. Has anyone ever told you that not properly explaining your thoughts can be pretty obnoxious? Once or twice, but if I had to explain everything that went through my head, I'd never be able to shut up. Now don't worry. I'll make this quick and it will be good for everyone, even if it takes some getting used to. He was already off before she could say any more, back to the shop and forcing her to follow as materials began moving the second he entered, flying through the air and being shaped under his power while he moved to enchant them, activating them all and forming a dozen new mini-gates to be used, feeling Cecily's eyes on him once he was done. I feel like I shouldn't have just seen that. It's fine. I was kind of keeping the fact I make these things private, but to be honest, I've shown and told plenty of people, and all of the gods of the world know, which means there's going to be a lot of their believers who do too, and they all already know not to bother me. Anyway, mini-gates. Set up 12 ends in the guild, and the other ends I'll get Thera to drop off in the surrounding towns and villages. This way, the overabundance of demis can help with healing and adventurer work in multiple towns instead of everyone being centered right here. Good idea, right? So you're turning our guild into a miniature gate network? Yeah, kind of, but hey, it's efficient. Plus, now if any of them have an emergency or we do too, there's a way to evacuate. Also, the benefits of trade and commerce should be a little easier too, but, well, I'll let you worry about the finer details. I kind of wish you'd worry about them before dumping them on me. Nah, you got this. Anyway, I'll help you carry the ends to the guild, and then after I'll go with Thera to start dropping these off. It will be great. She looked at each gate silently for a moment, torn between not wanting to deal with what a headache making so many places a single step away was sure to be with how useful they'd be to have around before sighing and accepting the truth of it, grabbing 4 of them in her arms to carry along. Next time, just make sure to give me any amount of notice before you do something like this again. Okay, yeah, I can maybe manage that. With one end of each left in the new wing of the guild, he found Thera after, and the 2 of them went off, flying to the surrounding communities and dropping them off close to each guild or clinic they held, giving a few words of explanation to whatever relevant party they could find before flying to the next until it was all done, letting him close his eyes after such a busy day to go to see his god, with Myriad and Nair both waiting. If you stumble upon this narrative on Amazon, be aware that it has been stolen from Royal Road. Please report it. All right, the demi-demons are rehomed, somewhat employed, and won't be impeding on the livelihoods of the other Stonewall residents, so I'd say all's well that ends well. I have 1 or 2 comments about how forceful you were getting some of that done. They will be ignored. Anyway, I've given them all some money too, and they can always come to me for more if they need it, but there's still a few who we didn't find work immediately, so I have an idea for that I want to float with you. And now I'm worried. Don't be dramatic, you're going to like it. Let's get a couple of them to act as priests for your church in Stonewall, and then once they're all more accustomed to that, I can put a mini-gate between there and your one in all faith for them to serve in your church there too. You're right. I actually do like that idea. The church would get visitors from time to time, but most of the time anyone went, the building was empty. Both he and Sakhel had their own tasks, so neither of them would manage it, leaving it instead for those who wanted to pray or read any of the books Ben had filled it with to take care of themselves. But given the role of the building, having someone actually in there to act as a spiritual figure would only help the god, leaving Ben to nod in the end. They're all devout. Any one of them would be a good choice, but we can discuss that later. For now, anything else I need to worry about? The world about to fall apart around us yet? No, but I was going to talk to you about the fact that Amy was going to be free to come in 3 days. Do you think the demis will be in a good enough space by then for you to work with her? 3 days, huh? Yeah, I'll make that happen. I don't want to be held up too long, and now that I've gotten both the guild and the clinic to help them adapt as well, things will be easier on me. Which means that once I'm done with her, I can move on to the tower and then, okay, yeah, we need to do that. Modifying people's souls. How long after I'm paid for my work can I hold off until I actually have to start? Why? Nair asked. I thought you were going to hold off a bit longer? When I'm done with the tower, I'll begin some more attempts to reach the third tier, but if I'm getting them to pay me in attributes, I really should get that before my awakening bonuses to reap the maximum benefits. So, how long would you say I can manage? Both gods thought for a moment, but it was Nair who answered, sounding hesitant. Many aren't going to believe you'd succeed, and others won't want to spend their faith to raise your attributes until you're ready to begin raising other people's as well, in case you somehow die first and their efforts are left to waste. But considering that risk and reward go hand in hand, it will be tough, but you have a proven track record with your work. I'm sure we can get you your payment a month before you begin modifying the souls of the world. Fantastic. I'm sure all of the gods are going to argue about payment too, but can I leave sorting that out to you guys? Considering that whatever you get is going to affect everyone you help, we'll get you a good deal, no need to worry about that. Fantastic, thanks. Which only leaves the question of if you can actually get to the third tier in the next month. I have an idea or two to try. And they are. Ben smiled, knowing how deeply his god would be against the main thing he could think of to try and raise his connect to the third tier. You'll have to wait and see. Pain in the ass. Everyone's gotta have their secrets. Besides, I'm still working out some of the finer details. Succeed or fail, you'll know eventually. But since you'll be attempting the tower first, Nair cut in between their bickering. Any idea for who you'll be bringing as your last party member? Ugh. I've been thinking about it. Since Delaire was his apprentice, she wouldn't be a bad choice, and getting a tower blessing would be a tremendous benefit for the young girl, but it wouldn't be an immediate benefit for the wider world itself, with the third wave feeling all too close, and of the others he could think of who might benefit from the skill level, he didn't actually want to bring them. No offense to Nair meant, but he didn't like his granddaughter or Zilly enough to want to help carry either to the top, leaving the question still on his mind. But even if it would be better to get someone who could take advantage of the level rewards for one of their awakened skills, it's not like that's mandatory. I've done enough towers where I was only able to level one of my unawakened skills by this point too, so could you guys get in touch with Will for me? He asked them. He's got a few awakened skills and is currently my only close friend without a tower blessing. He should be the best choice. Are you sure? Yeah, he's strong, and if I'm going to help someone, it should be someone I want to help. Which means all there is left is helping Amy, finishing this job and getting set up for the tower. With the demidemons mostly settled, or at least to a point where it had grown to be the realm of the healers and adventurers they were working with, along with their own efforts to help finish their adjustment to the new environment, Ben was once more able to focus on his various work, slipping on his coat to do exactly that as he began overfilling his soul. Helping them had put him behind, leaving him to still work through a job he should have already finished with ease, and that led him to pushing himself more than he'd planned. The pain it put him under making him appreciate the unexpected break all of the more now that it was done. Just a little longer of this, though. I've been making good progress getting through everyone's jobs. I'll be done before I know it. It was what he was trying to tell himself, at least. The ache demanding some promise of completion if he was going to keep working through it, and he just needed to remind himself that the pain was just another chore to help him grow, and that it at least had some side benefits as well in the form of skills that would raise with it. And maybe even the acquisition of new ones too. Because one day I'm getting pain resistance. Mark my freaking words. I don't know. The collective universe? Myself? Whatever garbage force has been keeping me from getting it after all I've been through on this garbage planet. I don't need any of that negativity so early in the morning. This isn't shame. This is indignation. If I'm going to be incompatible with every affinitied skill, then I shouldn't be incompatible with any of the non-affinitied ones. It's a little something called fairness. MMH, alright. One of his many tasks to finish, he walked over to one of his mini-gates and activated it. Finding not only Amy waiting on the other side to receive his lessons but Yuzu as well, the young soul mage practically wrapped around the other girl, holding her tight while he looked on. I'm just going to point out that it's not going to be the easiest to learn like that. Do I look like I have any choice in this? Amy asked him, torn between looking for help and coming across as deeply embarrassed. She's stronger than me. There's literally nothing I can do. Don't be like that. I'm just making sure you know I love you, Yuzu told her, making the girl trapped in her arms blush all the harder with Ben nodding in understanding. So, This is the reaction from what happened in the tower then? A reaction in particular to the final floor where some of her insecurities about her place in her own relationship were outed by her copy, Ben hitting the nail on the head in a way that only made her want to slink all the deeper into herself. Let's not mention that, please. Those two have been like, well, this ever since. Because we love you, Yuzu told her, squeezing tighter before taking her first proper look at Ben. And besides, Ben, I hate seeing you. Wow, rude. I thought we were pals. We are, but I feel like I go insane every time I get my eyes on you. I was already told the insane thing you did to yourself after the tower, but it turned you into a demigod. Wait, what? Ha, yeah, it's a whole thing. Ben laughed as he waved them in deeper through the shop. Sounds like the gods are going to start trying to offer the surgery to others in the world too, so it's a good discovery. I am once again showing my worth. Maybe you could do that without experimenting on yourself? The soul mage pointed out, getting a shrug for her efforts. I would if I could, but it was just convenient timing. Ben, please don't describe your heart being destroyed as convenient. You're making me feel bad for Thera. All right, but everything worked out. Now, since you're conveniently here too, can I get some help as well while you're around? What help making sure you don't destroy your soul? Don't think I didn't notice that the amount of them appearing around you immediately increased the second you noticed me here. Teehee? The comment got him a silent look before Yuzu sighed. I'm genuinely, constantly shocked that you don't damage your soul more with the way you use it. I can't imagine what the long-term effects of the things you do are going to be. Well, if I live long enough to see what the long-term has in store for me, I'll consider myself lucky, but for now, we've got to get you to work. Amy, you'll be on the forge at first today working on some simple projects to see how it benefits your hammer skills, and then we'll end the day with some woodworking for knife practice. I don't actually expect you to struggle much in either place, but what matters for both is having an artistic eye for these things, so try and grab whatever creativity you can for it. All right, should be a fun change of pace beyond hunting every day at least, she said, looking interested. But will this really be enough for the gods to raise my weapon skill? No clue, but it's better than nothing. Now come on, let's get started. He led her through a series of projects when they began, making simple J-hooks at first in the same way he himself had begun, as well as how he'd started Delaire's training before moving on to other projects that could help her work on different techniques that a hammer could apply to. Not only making a pot and a knife, since they were more straightforward projects, but also more artistic options as he forced her to work with care, shaping a piece of iron into a delicate flower and getting a surprise when she finished with the notification going through her head as she unlocked blacksmithing as a skill. If you discover this tale on Amazon, be aware that it has been unlawfully taken from Royal Road. Please report it. He blinked when it happened before a wide grin spread across his face. He didn't think it was the hardest skill to earn, but normally it still took a few days of effort, at least as far as he understood it, but not in that case. Even if it had come in a form meant for weapon wielding, Amy already had far more tool proficiency thanks to it than any normal person would, greatly reducing the skill threshold for her and an ability to learn that was boosted by his skills. And if it was that easy, in the past, Falk made me gain both knife and hammer wielder since they would add to my overall tool proficiency, but is there any reason the opposite won't work too? Get her some different crafting disciplines for whatever boost the shared coverage might give her weapon skill. Only one way to find out. Okay, change of plans, he told her. I wasn't expecting you to get the skill at all today, but since you did, we're moving straight to woodworking, and if you manage to get that as well, then we'll move on to other crafting disciplines as well. Stoneworking, cooking, art. I'll think of everything I can teach which might have some joint coverage for you, and we'll see just how many skills I can squeeze into you before the day ends. Ben? You look uncomfortably excited right now. Am I? Well, what can I say? Love an interesting project. He was going to work her all the harder for the day he had her, but she'd be fine. What mattered was what her success with gaining the skills meant, as his hope for her being able to level her weapon skill in the tower ballooned with the sounds of notifications filling the shop, both hers and his as the day went on. Available jobs. Trap user. Craftsman alchemy path. Craftsman artistic path. Craftsman blacksmith path. Craftsman cooking path. Craftsman stonecrafts path. Craftsman sewing path. a mathematician, a high tank, a high marksman, a high destruction mage, beginner puppeteer, outsider, body user, assassin, cycler, a beginner dancer,
Entrée.
a king of intelligence, soul creator, a god-defiling gardener, master actualizer. Well, what to go with this time? Which is fine, I was prepared for that. Wait, seriously? So he got an advanced soul mage variant and you guys didn't immediately make me help him with it after I finished him off the first time? Any luck with them getting advanced jobs? Okay, hopefully there won't be too many more so I can focus on myself a little sooner. May I remind you that this is only happening because the gods decided to get in my way? Anyway, this will only maybe affect my choices for the last option. I think I know what I want to take for the first two. While he only had a handful of options, still that would be second-tier jobs. For that run he decided he wanted to take some different choices, gaining some more bonuses to some of his less boosted skills before he'd get whatever additional benefits would come from a new tower blessing, and with that he made his first choice, hoping for some luck. I'll take body user. Why does flavor enhancement grow so easily? Okay, no, whatever. This is probably maybe fine as long as nothing gets a taste of me. Let's focus on the good instead. Being a demigod keeps paying off, just need agility enhancement at this point to round out the set. Even if that's the one I'm least likely to get. Either way, next job and next bit of growth. High tank. God. That would have been so nice to have before my heart was destroyed. What's that? A member of the party he was with asked, clicking her claws in curiosity that he waved off. Ignore me. Got distracted, but with that taken, I'll finish up here, leaving just the choice of the last one. It had been ages since his list of choices had been so slim, but while there were still a few decent options, he needed to look to the future. Since he was helping Elvid again, that meant the job he was helping with was one that was going to be even harder to finish than a typical third-tier job, meaning he needed to pick something good. Something he'd be able to get additional mountains of experience to on top of what he was already claiming from the way he'd think and the souls he'd make, and even if it wasn't perfect, one choice stood out more than any others. An option that, even if it might be long, would be finished instantly if he could succeed in awakening his connect after the tower. A big if to be sure, but one he was already depending on. Why not dare to feel a bit of hope something might work out? God, I'm practically going to be killing myself trying to awaken this stupid skill. The least it can do is finish my job on the way. Okay, decision made, I'm taking King of Intelligence. A job that only needed a few thousand points to finish, at least when it wasn't linked to second and third tiers to carry them along too. He was gaining almost 2,000 points a week by that point, and if he really did succeed in awakening his skill, his attributes doubling would do the job to give him whatever else he'd need. At least that was the hope, and trying to keep a positive mind, he let himself enjoy all he'd claimed from the jobs he'd taken so far, ending the day with a successful harvest. Man, I hate the gods of this world so much. No, I'm having an idle thought that you walked in on, and besides, I'm not talking about you. Mostly, at least. Just not exactly pleased about how my payment worked out this time. Except at the rate I'll be able to raise people's attributes, I'd be able to cover that in a single one if you combine all of the points any person is going to get from me. But that's not the point. I got 500 points to my attributes. Why were 300 of those put in my agility? I admit nothing. At least the other 200 were better spent. With 100 each going to both of his regeneration rates, two values he actually cared about. With that, his mana regeneration was standing at just above 10 minutes to refill from empty, and his vitality had more than doubled, meaning it was time to remake his Deathstone band for training that particular attribute while he continued to grumble. It's not like I don't get it, but come on, all of those points to that one stupid attribute is just so wasteful. It would have been infinitely better to split that 500 between the two regen rates and be done with it. My greatest gift to the world. He grinned. It'll be a planet of geniuses by the time I'm done. Which means more mind users for me to take advantage of too. You're right, Myriad. This really did work out pretty well. Myriad sighed. As soon enough doesn't exactly feel like soon enough. I'll have still lost 1 or 2 months on raising them. Ha, you got me there. Fingers crossed for another level or two soon. Still, 7 left to go through after this so long as nobody else gets an advanced variant. I really thought I'd be getting more job options as I went through all of this, but as things stand, I really am going to run out of all of my choices if I don't get some more. It's going to feel weird to be left with an empty list. MMH, true. I'll worry a bit more when I get closer to the end, I guess. Still a few others to get through before I need to start thinking about how to flesh out my list. Ben? Delaire spoke up, pulling him from his thoughts as she swirled a beaker in her hand, looking disappointed. I think I messed this one up. Alchemy was the task for the day, trying to get the girl plenty of experience on that front as well, with both successes and failures going hand in hand as she learned. Ben reaching out to take what she'd made and looked it over. MMH, looks like it, kiddo, but don't worry. These things happen. What matters in these cases is if it's still a usable potion that's just going to be of a worse quality, or if it's going to be completely ineffective, but, well, based on the coloration you ended up with and the smell, I'm not actually positive, so I'm going to do something you are not allowed to repeat. Understood. Okay, what? Royal Road is the home of this novel. Visit there to read the original and support the author. Instead of answering, he tipped it back and swirled it around in his mouth before swallowing, nodding when he was done. Oh boy, yeah, we need to go over how you made that because this is definitely poison. What? Spit it out then. Ha! It's okay. You don't need to worry about me, he reassured. I've got a fair bit of innate poison resistance, my mouth barely tingles. You, on the other hand, should absolutely not do any taste testing on anything you're unsure of, understood? I think this is one time you didn't need to bother telling me that. Better safe than sorry. Now, let's see where you went wrong and try to figure out how to make sure it doesn't happen again. It had been a while since he'd had to troubleshoot anything he'd made, but doing it for Delaire was fun in its own way, with Ben finding the answer quickly enough but wanting her to investigate it herself without being given the solution. The girl's eyes crinkling in concentration as she looked over her process and materials before pulling out a single leaf. Did I grab the wrong one? She asked, more to herself than him, but was still given her answer as he patted her head. Yep. Gotta be careful when going through storage. Even if it looks close to the ones you needed, that one there has an entirely different preparation method, and it looks like it had a negative reaction with a few of the other ingredients on top of it. Do I need to tell your mom and grandma that our little dryad can't tell the difference between different dried leaves? He teased, watching as her cheeks puffed out at the provocation. Give me another recipe. I won't mess up this time. Ha! All right then, kiddo. This time you're trying your hand at a lifeblood potion. One of my personal favorites. Why? Are they easy? Nope, they're actually a challenge for your level, but they sell well and are expensive. Two of any salesman's favorite words. If you open up your own shop one day, you're going to want to keep these in stock, but we can go over what to consider in sales a bit more in the future. If you're planning on working out of your village, that's probably going to change how you'd set things up a fair bit. He went over the details of selling just a bit longer, an aspect she had yet to really experience with the shop, perpetually closed now that its owner was off dealing with the tasks and expectations that came with reaching the third tier, but otherwise went on with the day of lessons. Ben guiding where he could until it reached its end, signaled by Thera and Mora walking through one of the gates. Hey, you guys are back a bit sooner than expected. It looks like the world managed to go a day without anyone getting hurt from either disaster or their own overwhelming stupidity, Thera said, looking cheerful. It was a pretty relaxed one compared to usual. Ha! Glad to hear it. Delaire, why don't we end things here? I can handle cleanup if you'll walk her home, Mora. I will. The spirit nodded, getting a smile in exchange. Thanks, kiddo. We'll be there to pick you up in a little bit, so have fun. Even if still withdrawn, he could see the boy was enjoying the company of someone closer to his age, at least mentally, and Delaire was still enough of a bundle of energy to be happy to have another friend. With the two of them leave himself and Thera alone in the shop as he tidied up now that the day was through. So, all of your co-workers feeling ready for you to disappear for another couple days soon? He joked while she sighed. You'd think they were going to die without me there to help out. Well, people do die from overwork, you know. When you're doing enough by yourself to be making most of the difference, they're probably feeling the strain. Ugh. It's so messed up that I need to count taking on a tower as a break for me. You've warped my sense of normalcy. Excuse you, this is definitely the demon's fault. I couldn't be more innocent. No, I think you could be a bit more innocent. Literally the most innocent guy you know. Besides, it really will be a break for you. I'm sure not expecting you or anyone else to do anything in this one. Let me carry you through the tower for a change after all the times you've brought me to the top. Ha, when you put it that way it does sound nice, she said, already imagining the thought of being able to sit down and relax while he covered all of the difficult bits himself. And Fontesh knows when we're going again? Yeah. She's good for looking after Mora, but I'm hoping she won't even have to. Not to brag, but I'm pretty damn good at what I do. There's a chance I'll finish up on the same day. That confident, are you? It's just a chance. I was told that this tower is harder than others since it lacks the whole constant threat of death thing, and for some stupid reason the gods were insistent I take on the hardest option for the floor. It's just as likely that I won't be able to finish it at all. Well, being positive, if it is as easy as you're hoping, don't be afraid to stretch things out just a little longer if you need to. Better to try too hard than too little, right? You just don't want to go back to work immediately. Nobody in their right mind would, she groaned, dramatically flopping over his shoulder and putting a stop to his sweeping. I used to have so much free time, Ben, and it's all vanished in the blink of an eye. I barely train my other magics anymore either. It's misery. Perils of a planetary emergency and newfound motherhood. You know, even if I'm not as strong as you, I'm not particularly weak either. Don't be in a hurry to see how far I can throw you. Ha, well, his words were cut off as the ground beneath him rumbled and kept shaking, leaving him to raise his hands in his defense as it went on. All right, you win guardianhood then. Don't break the shop over it. Thera shook her head. This isn't me. I've never felt an earthquake in Stonewall. Think you're strong enough to try and stop it then? Maybe, but Her thought was broken by another sound coming through with screams filling the air, and without another word the two were out the door, off to see just what had happened. Dallaire was humming as she pulled him through the streets, the young dryad as full of energy as ever while Mora looked at her, filled with his own curiosity from the bits in her soul that were standing out, forcing a question to the front of his mind. Just what is Ben doing to her? He'd been there for all of her last levels, crafting and enchanting and plant magic as well, and while he'd helped her along a bit with each of them, he could already see she was getting close to getting new ones again at a speed that couldn't be chalked up to his own involvement meddling with her soul. Compared to the people he'd see walking through town or at any of the places Thera would bring him while she worked, the growth benefits she'd get from working under a master seemed incomparable. Not just making her better faster, but also building her foundation for the future. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. He liked Dallaire almost as much as he liked Thera and Ben. It had taken a bit to understand that, and he was well aware he wasn't doing the best job of showing it, but despite that, all three of them had been doing their best to shower him with nothing but kindness, talking to and playing with him and trying to make sure he felt comfortable in everything he did, and it all felt just so nice. Incomparable to the life he'd had when he'd first been born. His mind flashed to it against his will, memories of orders he didn't want to follow and expectations he didn't want to meet. Day after day after day of feeling the crushing disappointment of both the great life and death spirits. Two he understood to be his parents who themselves didn't see each other as such. Spirits weren't parental beings, their race held no such instinct, so he didn't blame them either, but at the same time, he knew he was different from a normal spirit too. He hadn't even realized he'd been craving that sort of love until he'd actually started to get it. He hadn't meant to give any of that away either, but just the thought had brought a lull to his step, enough that it made Dallaire stop dragging him and turn back to make sure he was okay. Sorry, was I too fast? No, you're fine. How could she be too fast when he had perfect control over his speed thanks to the power he had over the mana that made up his body? If anything, he was the one always needing to take things slower for the mortals of the world, even if he didn't see it that way. He had his preferred pace, and it was enough to just wander peacefully, even if it did mean he'd be pulled along by the girl to keep up any time they were together. Despite what he'd said though, she slowed down, walking more his speed even if she didn't let go of his arm. Young but empathetic enough to see there was something in his thoughts, she tried to actually talk instead of just dragging him off as fast as she could to play. So, what have you been doing with Thera when you go out? Anyway? Nothing really. I'm just with her while she works, so I'm not left alone at home. I guess she and Ben aren't comfortable with the idea. Even if I'd be fine. That wasn't all entirely true, he wouldn't just do nothing. Even if that was what he wanted them all to think. He liked healers. He enjoyed the very concept of them. People who spent their time and energy helping others. Could there be anything more valuable in that or any other world? And feeling that, how could he not help them in turn? Everyone he could see was constantly putting in their full efforts, but it never seemed to be enough, which was where he came in, discreetly giving them the benefits of his own power where he could, even if every bit of growth they got from it typically just meant they had more work to do. Still, they were all happy each time they got a level, and that couldn't help but make him feel good as well, knowing that he could be more than what his creators had wanted of him. It was all a secret, of course. He didn't want people to know and start placing their expectations of what else he should be doing on them, but more and more he was wondering if it was something he could talk about, at least a little. He knew Ben would try to do the same, and he liked that, even if that particular guardian of his seemed to be a lot less efficient at it. Transferring knowledge to make it happen was always going to be harder on the recipient than just building up their souls with mana, but despite the differences in technique, Mora found himself wanting to talk about it, and more, if he was being honest with himself, he wanted to be praised. Every time he had been before had been wonderful, and he wanted it again. He wanted him and Thera to be proud of him. Unauthorized usage. This narrative is on Amazon without the author's consent. Report any sightings. Maybe one day. He still wasn't sure. He didn't know what sort of expectations would be placed on him if he revealed himself like that, and he wasn't so ready to find out. As things were, he loved his life. He didn't want to risk losing the happiness he'd found. Well, if you're not doing anything, you should work with me some more, Dallaire told him, oblivious to all of the thoughts he had swirling inside of him. It was fun before, wasn't it? It was. So you should come back sometime and learn more. It will be even more fun. Maybe, but there's only so much I can get from it. Huh, what do you mean? I can't enchant. When it came to the crafting Ben would teach, there were no real issues. He could memorize instructions and had no problem when it came to perfectly moving his body to his will, but he couldn't bind any magic to his creations, which seemed like one of the bigger parts of the work there, even if it just made Dallaire laugh. So what? I couldn't either when I started trying to learn this stuff. Yeah, but I'll never be able to. It was a limit within himself he didn't expect to bother him, and it never would have before he had been left there, but now it felt like a sore spot. He wanted to be able to do more things, unbound by the limits of what he was, but for all of his strength, there were some things he couldn't escape, even if Dallaire just laughed and patted his back. So you can't use magic then? So what? You can rely on me, she said confidently. Enchanting and plant magic. I'm great at both. Even if you can't do anything, I can do plenty. It's not like I can't do anything, he muttered, getting another laugh from her. But can you do this? She asked him as she walked over to a nearby garden at a passing house and, holding out a hand and concentrating deeply, made the flowers there bloom while looking both tired and smug. Bet you can't. He knew she just wanted to show off, but despite any maturity he might have had, he was still young, and the display combined with her attitude made him feel only one thing, a sense of provocation that made him want to boast and brag a bit too, one he normally would have been able to squash if it was with any of the adults around, but not with her. He knew she wouldn't have the same expectation of his power, and he wanted to show that even if he couldn't do the same things she could, he could still do plenty. And I can just make her promise not to tell anyone after, he told himself as he looked at the flower bed before shaking his head. As the holder of a power that combined life and death, he did have some power over the physical forms that held souls as well, even if they were weaker compared to the soul spells he could do. But if he was going to show off, he wanted to do it in a way that aligned with who he was, so he instead directed his focus to the world around him beyond the purely physical, speaking out as he did. Can all of you help me for a minute? He called out, not with his voice but with his mana, getting a particular mix of spirits to join him when he did, with one speaking up for the rest. What is it, Great One? It asked, sounding as unsure as it said it as any of them did. They understood that he was a great spirit, but they were unable to understand him beyond that, his nature a mystery to him. Not only was he something that existed beyond the regular bounds of their kind, but he was alone. No normal soul spirits in existence for him to represent. It was yet another thing that separated him, but one he could mostly ignore, instead focusing on the ones around him. I'm going to help you all get a bit stronger, so after I'm going to get you to cast a spell for me in exchange. Okay? We don't understand. That's okay, you will. He may have been limited in flexibility, but when it came to the domain under which he ruled, he was practically a god, and reaching out with his mana, he touched the souls of the spirits around him, feeling the locks that existed within each and opening them in a way that no other being could have done, thinking little of that choice until it was too late to undo it. The mana filling the world carried a scream as the earth shook beneath their feet, the garden they were by exploding in its growth to unnatural proportions with all of the other plant life around it with it in a way that forced everyone else walking the streets to flee and themselves as well, with Mora scooping up Dallaire to rush back to the shop, terrified of what he'd done and what consequences it would bring. Where the heart of Stonewall had once stood there was now a forest, the streets filled with plants towering higher in the sky than anything outside of their walls and only growing still, up and out as the stalks and branches spread, while Ben struggled to take in just what he was seeing, examining it for all it was worth to try and make sense of it. While there were a few trees mixed in among the dense mass of plants, they weren't the only things reaching into the sky, with flowers and grasses and fruit bushes towering at unnatural scales, with leaves and petals as big as invisible even from where he stood while as he watched. The few grasses cropping up in the cracks in the streets around him were feeling the same effect as whatever was causing the insane growth farther out, growing under whatever power was filling the land at unnatural speeds, even if where he was standing seemed to mean it was changing at a pace of centimeters per second instead of feet. It was enough to freeze both of them in their tracks, even as others ran away, with a question clear on each of their minds, Thera being the one to actually ask it. What the hell could be doing this? It had to be plant magic, but the amount of power and skill that sort of thing would take was simply outrageous, with that pointing to only two options as far as Ben was concerned. Either it was some bit of ritual magic gone wrong, an improbability considering how few experts there were in the world, and that with the amount he poked around the heads of the other townsfolk, he would have known if there was anyone in Stonewall who understood it well enough to pull that sort of thing off, with the other option being something much worse. A demon contender. If there was one who had managed to achieve both the 9th level of a high plant magic or else some other advanced variant of the skill, and the same for an awakened mana enhancement, it was possible to imagine a demon like that being capable of such a thing, even if that left the question of how such a beast could have gone unnoticed for so long. Those were his thoughts at least, but it seemed the reality was quite different, with Mora shooting back through the streets with Dallaire in his arms, a look of panic painting his usually inexpressive face as he reached them and spoke. I didn't mean to. Thera and Ben's eyes met briefly before he shook his head. Whatever the boy had done, it wasn't the time, and he instead crouched down while the child continued to sputter, trying to get too many words out at once to make any sense of it. Whatever happened, Mora, it's okay, we'll sort it out. Thera, watch the kids. I'll be right back. Instantly he was putting all of those new points of agility he'd gotten to use, forced to feel far more grateful for them than he'd ever hoped as he rushed through the streets in a flash, seeing the rate of growth around him in real time with the plants he passed getting bigger with each step, making it harder and harder to traverse what had once been the same streets he'd regularly walk down until he was seeing trunks and stems thicker than himself, forcing him to jump and climb over giant roots that were only getting larger, feeling his new heart pound as he went at the sheer scale of it all. It was at a level that was warping the world around it, but he had no choice but to push through, stopping only as he heard a yell that forced him to look up to find a man stuck in one of the still-growing branches and leaving him to spend his mana to test something Thera had suggested he should do, pulling himself to the sky to make himself fly. It was the sort of thing that seemed like it should have taken more practice, and he was definitely burning more mana than he should have had to make it work, but by forcing a series of micro-adjustments he kept himself stable as he went, grabbing the trapped man and bringing him down safely below. Run that way, he yelled as soon as their feet touched the ground, pointing back to where he'd come and watching as the other darted off, leaving Ben to continue deeper in, keeping an eye out for more people the entire way. He didn't find anyone else, whatever small blessing that might have been, but it was getting harder and harder to progress on foot, leaving him to question just how much mana he might need when he found whatever was causing everything before deciding he could sort that out when he got there and once more lifted himself into the air again, gaining the experience with flying he needed as he went, carefully avoiding the trees and branches while trying to keep a good speed. With how fast everything was growing, if he took too long, there wouldn't be a town left to try and save. Every minute counted, and as he got closer, he could feel the force of the plant mana tingling against his skin and setting his mana sense alight with its density, proving enough of a distraction for him to fall victim to an unexpected threat. Taken from Royal Road. This narrative should be reported if found on Amazon. With everything growing to such a scale, even trivial matters could become catastrophic, and that was exactly what happened when a single leaf came loose above him, falling down with the weight that came with a structure bigger than his body that smacked down squarely on his back, knocking him out of the air and down to ground below, winding him as he felt his body bruise but not break under the weight of it, and used his magic to turn it to dust, freeing himself to keep going deeper and finally finding the cause of it all. Or at least what contained it, with a pulsing sphere of plant matter at the center of the disaster, all of the mana powering the calamity around him coming from that one single point, and he took a step closer to it, almost meeting his end. A wooden spike grew out of it and shot at him, the giant thorn inches from impaling him as he forced his body to the side before being made to dodge again as a new one grew from the core to try its luck once more, missing yet again now that he was prepared for it as he took a step farther, materializing a knife once the next one shot out and cutting it down, slashing at each new thorn with each step he took until the volume increased, making him pull out more contained within his rings and swinging them with his magic, feeling the pulsing mana only grow stronger around him once he was within reach, and using all of the strength he had and the knife still in hand, slashed through the plant matter to reveal the thing hidden within, taking his breath away and setting his mind alight. A mass of mana, the likes of which he'd seen only a few times before, at least in that state. Impossible even as he took the thing in for what it was. Living plant magic the likes of which couldn't have existed but now hovered before him. A creature that managed to defy his expectations despite all he'd seen and been through since arriving on that world. He stood in the presence of a great plant spirit as its mana went wild, destroying the town around it. I didn't mean to. The boy's words echoed through Ben's head while worry filled his heart. A question coming to the front of his mind that he couldn't escape as all of his concerns about the difficulties that would come with trying to raise such a godlike being came to a head. "Oh, Mora, what did you do here?" It was going to have to be a question for later. As things stood, he needed to focus on the problem in front of him, and with his mind moving in a flash, he did the only thing he could, connecting to the creature to try and access its thoughts for whatever it was worth. Watama, 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 Watama. It was enough to almost make him break the connection as the depth of what Spirit was feeling sunk in while his own minds moved in a blur, trying to examine it. Was it insane? Maybe. He definitely felt a certain edge to its thoughts that was reminiscent of the more troubled minds he'd brought back from the demon world, but he felt more than just that as well. It's like, what? A panic attack? An identity crisis? Maybe a bit of a mental breakdown too, but something that all wraps together into one main issue. A problem with its sense of self. Diving into its memories, Ben was able to see perfectly what had been done to it. Mora for some reason calling for what had once been a group of individual spirits before doing something to them to change that, going against their inherent nature to bring them together into something more. Something that not one of the individual spirits that had gone into it had been prepared for or understood, leading to the present issue that was about to sort itself out in the worst way possible. Spirits were made of the same mana they'd use, and while he couldn't perfectly judge the volumes of others, he could still feel it enough to see what was about to happen. The one he was with was about to exhaust its supply, killing itself in the process. Watama, 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 what? An outcome he rejected. He couldn't just let it die, and he couldn't let the consequences of what was happening be left on Mora's consciousness any more than they were already going to be, so he reached deeper into the new spirit's mind, touching every part of it with what he was while at the same time reaching through the gap he'd made to grab it tight with his hands, speaking with his voice and thoughts as he did. What are you? You are Bloom. Putting all of the meaning behind it he could through the thoughts connecting them, he did his best to give the spirit what it had lacked. The same thing that was throwing it into its disarray. He gave it an identity, filling what had once been a collection of life and earth and water spirits all of the knowledge he had of plants and the magics that could be used on them, as well as the feeling of using them he remembered from any time he'd connected with the Dryads and he felt it work. The system saying as much as the name was accepted. a notification going off in the other's head as it calmed down while a new one went off in his own. Hive mind level increased. I am Bloom, it said after a beat, the unsustainable growth that had been filling the town stopping with the bit of stability that came to its mind, with Ben letting out a relieved sigh as he slumped to the ground, the Great Spirit still in his arms. That's right, you are. Now, why don't the two of us go to figure out just what that means? He tried to keep from looking injured as he rushed back, acting like he hadn't just been briefly crushed by the time he reached the shop door, the new Great Spirit held in his arms, making for a good distraction to keep Thera from seeing any bit of pain when he got in, her eyes locking onto it instead. Wait, is that Dash? A great plant spirit. Its name is Bloom. Hello, Princess, it greeted, catching her off guard as the first Great Spirit to refer to her as such and made her stumble. What? Hello? Please hold that thought for a minute. Ben, what, you're hurt? I'm just exhausted, he lied. I ran pretty hard and well, you know how I feel about that sort of thing. You're bleeding. Am I? He rubbed at his face, feeling a gash along his forehead that must have come when he was knocked down that he did his best to dismiss. It must have happened while I was running. A few branches scratched me along the way, it's nothing, he told her, wanting to drop the matter given who else was in the room and how things looked for them. Mora was curled up in a ball, looking like the only thing keeping him from bursting into tears was the structural impossibility of it, while Dallaire sat by his side, doing her best to comfort him even without knowing what happened and not wanting to put more pressure on the child. He pulled Thera into his mind and increased her thinking speed to explain what happened. So Mora was able to turn a group of regular spirits into a plant spirit, he told her, seeing the shock in her eyes from the very thought of such a thing as he went on. I saw it in their memories. I don't know why he did it, they don't either, but the change, well, it was sudden and unexpected for them, and as a result, its mana went wild and caused all of this. And you were hurt. It's fine. I was knocked down. Neither of them meant to cause all of this, and I'll live, so it doesn't matter. What matters is what we're going to do now. Oh, gods above, what even should we do? Thera asked him. Destroying a large part of town isn't going to be the easiest thing to come back from. We'll have to dash. Thera, he said, cutting her off when it looked like the thought of it all was going to make her panic. I'll handle the town, that's less important right now. We now have not one, but two new types of great spirits that your paternal race never expected to exist. We've been doing our best with Mora and we'll keep doing our best, but we need to talk to someone about this too. Your relatives need to meet them, him and Bloom. She took a deep breath, trying to calm down before resting her head on his shoulder. I really should have made the time to talk to them about Mora by now. It'll be fine. It'll be, maybe a bit uncomfortable and awkward depending on how things go. But it will be fine. I'll do my best to sort things out in town, and then we can dash. I'll go with them now. I shouldn't have put this off as long as I have. I'm not going to put it off anymore. Do what you need to do, and then come find me when you're done. You sure? Yeah. The sooner I get this over with, the better. He released her from his mind when she said it, leaving her to try and put on the most comforting face she could before turning to her ward, still sitting to the side, still completely withdrawn into himself while she crouched down and reached out a hand. Mora, it's like Ben's told you. Everything's okay. We're here for you, but now we need to go talk about all of this. Can you do that for me, sweetheart? Okay. All right, we're going to meet a bit more of your extended family as well. It might be uncomfortable at first, but they'll all love you just like we do. Don't worry. He took her hand as she said it, a smile being his reward as she turned back to Ben. And are you going to manage Dallaire right now, or want to make her an amulet, so I can take her with me? I'll make sure she gets home, don't worry. All right, in that case, Bloom, come with me too, she told the new spirit, offering her other hand for it to fly over to. Out of Ben's grasp, and with one final look at him, she stepped through the gate to her family home, leaving Ben to get a handle on the aftermath. A case of literary theft. This tale is not rightfully on Amazon. If you see it, report the violation. Myriad. It's not exactly a code red anymore, but I need your help for a bit to sort some things out. The god said, at a loss as it surveyed the surrounding town. Yeah, well, it's been a hectic hour. I'm gonna deal with it and I'll explain later, but for now, call all of the demis both in and out of town that have any healing magic and get the ones out of town in particular to grab any spare hands they can to come back with them to help for any injured there might be around. Also, reach out to Analia and get her to find wherever Sonia is working to send her back. An awakened life mage is only going to help right now. Yeah. Find me Sakhel and send her my way as fast as possible. I want her to get Delaire home while I deal with this. Thanks. Okay, now I need to actually deal with this. Delaire? Kiddo? Will you be okay waiting for your cousin here for a minute or two? Yeah. I will, but is Mora going to be okay? She asked in concern, bringing a small smile to his lips. He's going to be fine, kiddo, don't you worry. As an adult, it's my job to clean up after him. Which means it looks like I'm going to be breaking one of my rules to do it. Walking back, he pulled the Church of Myriad from where it had been hung up before putting it on and filling up his soul to go out to face the world with it. Feeling the millions of points of mana stretch him out and empower him as all of the minds in his head began casting with it in different ways, trimming the closest bits of growth around him while he walked the streets to the bigger areas of it while the people of the town slowly returned. He ignored them, though anyone who had run away was safe. Instead, as he moved farther and his attention was focused on the treetops, wanting to be sure there was nobody within them once he materialized saws to cut each one down, tearing away bigger and bigger plants but not letting them fall. The closer he got to the heart of it, all the more disastrous it would be if they were left to collapse, so instead he held them in the sky above with his power, looking like a god to any who saw. Oof, oh yeah, definitely damaging my soul a bit with all of this. A part of him thought, ignorant of the impression he was giving to all who could see, while his god commented, "This isn't going to be enough to awaken it, no matter how much I want to." He thought back with a sigh, continuing to cut everything away as he moved through the streets until the sun above was blotted out by the sheer mass of it all. With how much my mana pool has grown, the total volume I can squeeze into me has as well. It's just going to hurt the entire time. Which is why it's such complete and total bullshit that I can't get my freaking pain resistance. He kept walking till he reached the other end of town, having a field to safely drop it all in, and was content to leave it up for grabs for whoever might want it. He didn't have time to worry about anything else, his work wasn't done. Myriad, has anyone died? It was a question he'd wanted to avoid. It was what he was most afraid of, but in a small mercy, his god gave him the answer he'd wanted. Thank God, that makes things easier for sure. In that case, I can focus on repairs. Plenty of buildings had been damaged, if not outright collapsed from Bloom's magic. A tree's roots could split mountains, and the town had felt the full weight of that, with the destruction being no simple thing to repair. For anyone else that was, but as Ben pulled soul-breaking volumes of mana through himself to work, the lack of respect he had for the privacy of those around him showed its worth as well, as he looked at all of the memories of the townsfolk he'd ever seen, taking bits and pieces from everyone to create a mental model of the town itself inside of his head, to let him repair what he could within the rubble and materialize what he couldn't, building up the destroyed areas to be better than new, with the millions of points of power flowing through him as structures were remade and reinforced, while enchanted items got the full benefits of his skill instead of whatever paltry ability their original makers had. The only thing that was irreplaceable for him was the food, and any plant life he'd just had to destroy thanks to how it had been empowered, but it didn't feel long before everything he could do was done, leaving the town looking largely untouched, and let his focus drop from what he needed to accomplish to the rest of the world around him, finding himself surrounded at a distance by a crowd of citizens in naked awe. Without knowing how he'd done it, what he'd shown was a pure display of power in proportions none there had gotten to witness before, with the world itself seeming to bend to Ben's whims. It felt like looking at a god in the height of their power in action instead of their local blacksmith, instantly altering the opinions of those around him and warping them all the more so as he bowed down before them. "I'm sorry," he yelled out for all to hear, happy to take advantage of the crowd he'd gathered. "This was my fault. Something I was testing went drastically wrong, and this is how it turned out. I've done my best to fix everything I've damaged, but for all costs I haven't been able to cover. Please go to the Adventurers Guild and I'll make sure you're all compensated." Which meant he was going to have to go to the guild and leave a large sum of money with them on top of compensating them as well for what work that would bring, but that was a minor problem in the face of everything else. with his god speaking up at his declaration. His god asked, "I'm one of his guardians, Myriad. If this was a smaller thing, then I'd go around and apologize with him to everyone, but this wasn't just a small thing. I can't let the hatred and anger of an entire town be directed at a child, and besides, this is at least partially my fault too. I'd been waiting for him to open up to us about why he doesn't want to use his magic instead of trying to talk to him because I thought it would be fine, but that's my mistake. If there's any anger about it, I can cover the cost." She tried to keep the headache from touching her face as she left Ben, taking her first step through the gate to her old room and trying to seem positive for Mora and Bloom both as she went, even if she was expecting things to instantly become a mess. When Ben had brought Ogilt back with him, all of the nearby great spirits had reacted almost immediately. She was sure the same thing was going to happen there, but for whatever bit of mercy it held, they didn't rush to her side, instead letting her lead the two through her home, trying to make sure they were both comfortable while she did. "So, this is where I grew up," she told them. "My old home and homeland. A bit bigger than what we've got in Stonewall." "Huh. I remember it," Bloom said, bearing the histories of all of the original spirits that had made it up while Mora stayed quiet, still withdrawn from it all like the child he was, scared of what he'd done and what was going to come from it, with Thera trying to provide a bit of comfort by giving his hand a squeeze. "It's going to be fine, sweetie. A bit awkward at first, maybe, but fine in the end. All it is introducing my family to two new types of spirits that have never existed before in the history of the universe and explaining that one of them created the other. How hard could that be? I really hope I haven't accidentally been screaming with my mana and just not noticed." She tried her best to steel herself. It would be fine in the end, she would make sure of it. She just needed to get through one long conversation first and trying to put it off no longer. Let her mana sense guide her, feeling the point where it was practically screaming as it led her to the lounge and all who waited within. With the crowd there making it clear they were trying to show some level of tact. The fact that her father, Lux, Funa, Ogilt, and Encetus were all gathered and waited certainly showed they had all known when she'd arrived and had made the choice to not just swarm her room, but now there they were, face to face, as all of the original spirits subtly shifted their attention between the two, with her father speaking first. "So, this is the end product of Vividus's experiments?" A comment with no emotion behind it, but a sentiment cold enough that Mora took a step closer to her, with Thera not only shooting her father a glare but a small magic nullification spell as well to really drive home her displeasure. "No, this is her son, Mora. Me and Ben have been raising him, but something came up, so I've come here so he can meet the rest of his family, but if you can't have any manners around your new nephew, we'll go back." "And is the other one in your arms the issue in question?" Funa asked. "I can't imagine Abris and Salanoth contributing anything of themselves to her to make something like that happen." "I'm Bloom," the new spirit added, seeing they were talking about it while Thera extended her glare to the rest of them. "And it doesn't matter, if the rest of you don't shape up right now, we're going back. I just told you this child is Mora. If you have the slightest inclination of acting like family, there's something else you should all be doing right now." Lux was the first one to understand what she meant, seeming like the most open of them all as she spoke up, even if she herself still didn't sound confident as she went. "Hello, Mora. My name is Lux, the Great Light Spirit. You can call me either Lux or Auntie if you'd like, whatever you're comfortable with. And Bloom, we can take some time later to figure out how to think of each other." With her introduction made, it was enough for everyone else to catch on too as the others spoke up, one by one. "I'm Funa, the Great Fire Spirit, Encetus. Ogilt. I'm Thera's father, Abris. Now Dash. We can talk a bit more about Mora," Thera said, cutting her dad off. "We can focus on all of the more relevant stuff for now. If any of you had any doubts, he is a genuine great spirit and he has power over souls, so he's the first mixed spirit, but he's not like any of you with all of your years and history. He's been shaped by his birth. You can think of him as being like a 10-year-old incubus but without 10 years of experience behind him. Ensure your favorite authors get the support they deserve. Read this novel on the original website. And are you sure he's not just acting like that?" Encetus asked, flinching back as Thera shot another nullification spell his way. "Ben was able to confirm it," she told him coldly. Now, since we've established that you're talking to and about a child here, all of you think long and hard about just how you're going to act with him, understood? Ahem. All right, her father said. But there's not just one new spirit here. Where did Bloom come from? Mora made him. I see. How? Same way all of you were supposedly born. A bunch of regular spirits merging together. In their case, it was just the 3 affinities that typically go into plant magic. It was a little surprising when it happened, which is why we're here. I handled existing poorly, Bloom said brightly. The contrast between the words and the sentiment bringing subtle looks between it and Ogilt as they were forced to wonder if they had an insane great spirit as an issue now to add to their depressed one. He's better now, Ben's dealing with it. I can give you the details later. Yes, later in general feels like it will be for the best. Thera, we need a little to talk about all of this. Would you all mind giving us just a bit of time? All right, we'll find another room to relax in then. Well, that could have gone better. Could have gone a lot worse too. But her family hadn't been outright welcoming, but other than the very start they hadn't been hostile either, and she knew that this had to be a shock to them that was on par with or maybe even greater than her own birth. After all of the eons of their existence, what a spirit was had just fundamentally changed. But that's not what's important right now. She thought with a sigh as she walked into one of the other living rooms to be found in her family's massive home. There's a whole other conversation I need to get ahead of before they're done for whatever questions they have. Taking a seat and leading Mora and Bloom to sit with her, her focus was directed on the spirit she was raising, trying to be comforting as she spoke up. Well, that wasn't the best first meeting, sweetheart. I'm sorry about that. They're normally a lot nicer, but well, I'm gonna say they were surprised. It's okay. It's my fault. No, it isn't, Mora, they're just… Well, despite that introduction, if you could try to give them all a chance to show you their nicer sides later, I'd appreciate it, but if it still seems like you won't be able to get along after that, then you don't have to see them again. It's fine, they weren't that bad. Well, all right, but now there's one more thing we need to talk about, she told him, watching him shrink back into himself with the full knowledge of where the conversation was going to go. Mora, why did you make Bloom? He didn't answer, curling up instead and making Thera crouch down in front of him, sounding gentle and keeping a comforting look on her face. Mora, I'm not mad at you, but this is something we need to talk about. Can you please tell me? I was trying to show off. She did her best to hide the surprise the answer caused her, even if it left a small pause in her before she went on. I see. And why were you trying to show off? Mora. Dallaire was teasing me, so I was going to show that even if I couldn't use plant magic, I could make someone who could. Such a simple answer left Thera almost biting a hole through her cheek. It was so easy to forget the power a great spirit held, and here it was, being wielded by a child for childish reasons, fundamentally altering a group of people on a whim to try and impress a friend. It wasn't something either she or Ben could have expected. There was no way for either of them to know spirits could be altered in such a way, but that wasn't an excuse. They knew how strong he was, even if he'd done his best until that point to hide it, which meant there was always the potential for something on that scale to happen. They'd just been leaving it be since it hadn't been affecting them until then. All issues she'd need to work through and talk to Ben about later, but as things were he was dealing with the fallout of it all. She'd need to do her best to deal with things on that side of the gate by herself as she tried to figure out just what to say. All right, I understand, she eventually settled on. But Mora, it's important to consider how you use the magic you hold. There's times it's acceptable and times it's not. Altering what a person is like isn't something you can do without talking to them and making sure they absolutely understand before you do it, even if smaller things like, say, helping people raise their levels is fine. If you're ever not sure if something is okay to do to someone, wait and ask me or Ben. All right? You knew that you were helping the people around you level up their skills in the clinics and hospitals we'd go to, as well as when you stayed with Fontesh? She asked with a smile. You didn't do the best job of hiding it. Can you tell me why you've been trying to keep it secret? I didn't want anyone to expect me to. To what? Help level people? She could see why he wouldn't want to. That was a lot of expectations to place on a child, and she could only imagine that Vividus must have been heaping them on him before she'd given up. But he shook his head, the issue coming from a different angle. I don't want to hurt people. Hurt people? Sweetheart. she asked, trying to keep the edge from her voice. What exactly did Vividus want you to do? Mora. She wanted me to hunt demons. Calling demons the enemy of the world was really thinking too small by that point. They'd destroyed and conquered countless worlds and shown no inclination to stop. Even Ben, a mind reader with no preconceived notions about them when he'd arrived, had looked in their souls and found nothing redeemable. The universe was something for them to kill their way across before they'd set their sights on each other, and there wasn't a single part of her that viewed reality as better for their existence. And yet, like it or not, by the way the system measured things, those same creatures were people. Able to think and learn and grow, all to an extent that anything lacking sapience would fail at, with that fact leaving a definitive mark on reality as well. Thanks to the meddling of the forbidden gods, the people of the world saw them as such as well, whether they understood that fact or not, with all of those problems linking together to come crashing down on Mora and what Vividus had wanted for his existence. She'd wanted a weapon that could kill with the strength of any of her kin, but what she'd gotten was a child being asked to murder indiscriminately, with the worst part being that she didn't know what to do about that fact. Demons were monsters, sapience or not, and their existence was a blight upon the universe. No matter how much she disagreed with and disliked her aunt, she could agree that their existence wasn't something to be tolerated, but that was a concern for adults. No matter what the outcome, she and the planet as a whole hadn't fallen so far that they'd throw children on the battlefields for whatever little they could do. But he's not just a child, came a whisper from the back of her mind. He's a great spirit, someone who can handle an invasion point by himself. More than one, even if he had access to some mini gates, then he'd be able to lessen the strain on some of the other points too. He's powerful enough that... She took a deep breath, cutting that thought off. It didn't matter how powerful he was a child. She wasn't going to look at just the numbers of it, and if any part of her was in agreement with Vividus, then that was a good enough indicator that that part was in the wrong, no matter the benefits there may have been to get. Leaving the only problem being what to even say to that, as her thoughts flashed to what she would have needed at his age. Settling the matter easily. Reaching out, she pulled him close, into a tight hug as she spoke. Mora, you don't have to do anything you don't want to, at least nothing like that. If anyone tries to make you, then you just tell me or Ben, and we'll make sure they can't ask you again. Okay? Okay. She felt him hug her back and didn't let go, wanting to give all the comfort she could without worrying about if she was right or not. It didn't matter in the end. What was right for the world was a problem for the gods. She only needed to worry about what was right for him. She rubbed her eyes after he let go, feeling a bit overwhelmed herself before clearing her throat. All right, now there's one more thing you do need to do. Okay? Auhikt. What? No matter what you meant to do, you did something wrong to Bloom. You have to apologize, and then together, we'll try to figure out how to make up for it. Okay. Okay, he said, nodding slightly before turning to the other spirit who'd been quietly watching the entire time, bringing his head down as he spoke. I'm sorry. I didn't think about what I was doing, but I can't undo this. Is there any way I can make this right? The plant spirit was quiet for a moment, its thoughts a mystery before it spoke. I understand you didn't mean anything, and I can forgive you for that, it said, sounding confused and unsure of itself. But what I am is a great spirit? You are... Mora nodded. But I am alone. You are... Mora nodded, a small shift in his mood catching Thera's eye, but was something to bring up once that was done. Can you change that? Mora looked to Thera, looking for something, but she didn't know what until she asked. Mora, you said I should ask you if you weren't sure about if something is okay? I did. What is it you're looking to do then? Can I make regular plant spirits then? Are you going to need to use any other spirits to do it? Yes. Then as long as you get their permission after explaining exactly how you'd need to do it. Okay? Okay. It wasn't long for the life, water, and earth spirits to arrive. It was their beloved princess who called for them after all, along with not one, but two great spirits. The fact that those two in particular didn't fit in with their understanding of their race was strange but not insurmountable, and once they took the time to explain what they wanted to do, it felt the same. Strange, but in its own way. Something they couldn't fully understand as they began. the mana making them up mixing, while Mora stared on in concentration for what he was about to do. Mora, Thera asked him. If you can't, it's okay, sweetheart. Just do your best. I can, the soul spirit told her, not with confidence but with certainty. There's no reason I can't, it's just manipulating different locks than before. It'll just take a second to make sure I get right. She had no clue what he meant by that, her spiritual sight giving nothing away. Even if she was sure there was something going on within their souls that Ben probably would have wanted to get a look at, but it didn't matter. Even if she couldn't see it working, she could feel it, the mana in the room changing from just the 3 pure affinities to something new as the first dozen plant spirits to exist came into being. Enjoying the story? Show your support by reading it on the official site. Not changed the way Bloom had been, but instead born in an interaction that normally never would have been possible. The original spirits who'd contributed their mana were not changed for the experience as they went on. Thera reaching out with her mana empowering to make up for what they'd lost, and to keep replacing it as that small starting group only grew as a dozen plant spirits changed to 100 and then more beyond. The room growing thick with them and the sounds of their chatter and Bloom lighting up to have them, becoming more whole for their existence. A great spirit needs regular ones as much as they need their greats. Thera thought as they went on, her eyes turning to Mora and feeling her own sense of understanding. He was alone in that sense, the only one of the soul spirits, but if he could do that then there was no reason he had to be. But later, it was going to be his choice if he wanted other soul spirits to exist in the end, but for the moment her focus was directed to the new spirits around them, hearing them chatter to each other in curiosity and to their great one too, seeming collectively positive overall and letting her breath a small sigh of relief. At least they all didn't react to their newfound existence like Bloom did. That would have been a nightmare. I think they handled it better because they were born like this, Mora said, seeing right through her. With Bloom, I combined things that shouldn't have been combined, forcing each conflicting individual into one. That was a mistake. One you've made up for, she said, rubbing his head before turning to the other great spirit in the room. Bloom, are you satisfied? Has Mora done enough to make up to you? He has, it said. Thank you. If the boy could have blushed he would have, settling for a small bow instead. I'm still sorry. I won't make a mistake like that again. Everyone makes mistakes, Mora, Thera told him. What matters is learning from them. I think you did that. I did. Good, now dash. A knock on the door cut her off, her expectations about who it was betrayed as when it opened. The other great spirits weren't revealed but instead her mother, looking far too interested in what she'd walked in on and leaving Thera to sigh. Don't you still have work to do for the day? I don't think that's any way to greet your mother, Pelenia said. But it's lovely to see you too, sweetheart. I found your father a bit earlier and he filled me in. Is this little cutie Mora? He is. Mora, this is my mother, Pelenia. Feel free to think of her as your aunt. Hello, he greeted, withdrawing once more now that there was a new face in the room which Pelenia ignored, rushing over and pulling him in for a hug. Well, what a handsome little guy. I hope my husband wasn't too grouchy when he met you. It's fine, I've dealt with worse. I really do need to murder Vividus if I can one of these days. The world could use a new great life spirit with some actual morality. Ha, I see, Pelenia told him, able to hide her own feelings on the thought far better than Thera. I hope worse isn't my daughter. Mom, what the hell? It's not. Mora shook his head, getting a smile from the queen. Well, good. But if you don't mind, I'd like to borrow her for a bit. Would you be okay here with... Was it Bloom? It was, hello? I'll be fine, Mora nodded, with Thera left looking between the three before getting up. Okay. I'll be right back, but if you need anything come find me. Okay. She followed her mother from there. Any number of thoughts about what she might have wanted filled her head as they moved to her bedroom for some privacy. Pelenia cutting to the heart of things when they got it. So, how's trying to raise a child? I don't know, stressful? Even more so because of what he is. Dad told you what happened. He did. How long have you been looking after him now? Vividus dropped him on my doorstep a few weeks ago. Me and Ben have been looking after him ever since. It was an answer that brought a small smile to the Queen's face. Acting as a couple of proper parents then. Ugh. Don't get on that. I'm acting as his guardian. MMH, you were always just as firm about not wanting kids as you were about romance. Her mother laughed. Already caved on that second bit though. Didn't you? Ben's different. Now, what's this all about? A conversation about what you want between mother and daughter. I don't think that should be so shocking. Okay. But is this going somewhere or can we head back? So impatient. Her mother sighed. I wonder where you get that from. Mother dash. If it's too much, you can leave Mora with us. What? You said it yourself, you don't want children and that boy isn't just a child. You've just seen firsthand the difficulties that sort of power can bring in the hands of someone without the experience to know how to use it, but here, I'd say we'd be uniquely suited to raising him. A house full of spirits, great and small. For parents living here within Cetus only a gate away. Well, more his partner than him, but you get the point, and a whole host of staff too. It would be significantly better for the boy. What, you can't seriously think getting rid of him would be for the best? After his own parents just did. Better sooner than later if it's going to happen. Children are clever, Thera. If you don't want them, then they're going to pick up on it. If you don't want him, then he's going to realize eventually, and you have no idea how long it will take a boy like that to grow up too, if he ever will. Just how long are you willing to spend raising him? As long as I have to. I'm not just giving him away like he's nothing. She felt herself getting heated, but in the face of that, her mother just grinned. Is that so? All right then, let's head back. Let's head back? That's it. What more do you want? If you're insisting on looking after him, then there's nothing I can do about it, so just make sure to bring him by from time to time, if you need help or even if you don't. Why do I feel like you just played me? I have no idea what you're talking about. Her mother laughed as they made their way back to the two they'd left, with Pelenia rushing back over to scoop up Mora once again. All right, Mora, sweetheart? Ignore what Thera told you before. You can call me Grandma. I'll accept nothing else. Mom, what are you doing? Making sure he knows what to call me. Now, try it out once, would you? All right? Mora said, looking between her and Thera in confusion. All right, what? All right, Grandma. Thera could only hold back a groan at her mother's antics while her mother only beamed, looking on top of the world for getting what she wanted and for seeing a new side of her daughter too, leaving her to laugh in the end. All right, well, I can't let anything make my cute little grandson unhappy, so I'll go beat the rest of them into shape so they'll finish up whatever silly things they're talking about. Sit tight. I'll be right back. It was only as he finished up as much as he could in Stonewall that he passed through the gate to Analia, relying on Bind to tell him where to find Thera as he navigated the halls of her home to find far more than he'd expected, with the room holding not only her, Mora, and Bloom, but a variety of spirits as well, with connecting to them revealed them to be plant spirits. Well, looks like things have been interesting here, he said, pulling their attention to him and forcing both Thera and Mora up. You're hurt, Mora said, racing to his side and getting a small chuckle for the unexpected level of energy as Ben rubbed his head. I'm fine, don't worry too much. Your soul's all torn up. Happens from time to time, such is life. Well, I'll fix it, so stay still. That got him to raise an eyebrow as he looked at Thera, his girlfriend shaking her head. It looked like Mora wasn't going to hide the way he'd use his magic anymore. At least not from them. But he'd have to wait to ask how things got to that point, with Thera taking his face in her hands to look him over. Did you stop at a healer before coming here? Nah. Why bother when anything less than an awakened one is going to do basically nothing? The answer was unexpected, her face scrunching up in surprise. Your wounds are already a lot better, and it looks like you're easier to heal now too. Am I? Huh. I guess this is the first time I've needed to be healed since I became a demigod. Neat. I'd say that's a little more than neat. You might even manage to see a decent effect if you tried to get help from a regular healer. And that's very cool, just not crazy unexpected. My healing rate did go up when I got my integrated demonic body too. Yeah, but your healing enhancement merged into it to make it happen. Well, Yeah, but if becoming part god doesn't have any positive effects on my body, then really, what's the point? She just sighed and kept healing him. Her and Mora, both as his body and soul, were slowly repaired from the damage they'd been put through. A silent agreement to talk about everything that had happened, but later. The day had been long and they each needed their rest, even if it seemed like one more thing was coming to break it as the door opened up, letting Pelenia and the rest of the great spirits inside. All but the queen looked beaten down and tired in a way that defied their species. Whatever they were already feeling only amplified as they went inside and saw all of the new plant spirits filling the room. But with a swift elbow from his wife, Abris bowed down as he spoke. Mora, we did not greet you properly when you arrived, and for that we're sorry. Same to you, Bloom. For better or worse among us, we great ones choose to view each other as siblings of sorts, and before anything else, we should have remembered that. You're both our kin now before anything else. We just need to adapt to this changing world. Of course, Mora, given your own circumstances, whether you want to think of yourself as our brother or our nephew is completely up to you. In the case of the rest of them, Pelenia cut in, practically glowing. Since I'm married to this oaf, you can call him Grandpa. You can think of me however you're most comfortable, and we'll all accept it, but for now, we'd like to hear what happened before you arrived, if you'd please. We promise we'll listen until you're done. Mora looked to Thera, feeling unsure until she took his hand. A case of literary theft. This tale is not rightfully on Amazon. If you see it, report the violation. It's okay, Mora. Me and Ben are here for you. All right. With the two by his side, Mora told them what had happened and what he'd done, with Thera, Ben, and Bloom all adding details where they could while the other spirits listened, all of them looking conflicted by the end of it all. Who would have thought a change in our souls could alter our nature to such an extent? Funa muttered as Lux thought aloud. What else do we have to change, though? Mana is normally stored in the soul, but we ourselves are mana. It always had to be our souls dictating our nature, but who would have thought a change like that could happen? Abris sighed. No soul mage nor god we've ever met has ever implied that they thought something like this would be possible. But no matter how powerful they may be, they'd never be as attuned to their magic as one of our kin, Lux pointed out. And it's something that would have never been discovered in the first place if we hadn't been bound to the system. True, but now that we know, well, I'm not going to advocate for bringing it up to the other three right now, all things considered, but we should at least get Salanoth here to fill him in and discuss where to go from here. Considering the implications, there's still going to be a lot to talk about. But it's getting late, Funa pointed out. Thera and Ben both need their rest, especially with all they'd been through. Bloom, Mora. Would you both want to join us for a bit while those two get some sleep? I will. Bloom agreed while Mora shook his head, grabbing Thera's hand tighter. I want to stay with them. If that's what you'd like, it's fine, the dark spirit told him. But won't that be boring? I can entertain myself. All right, if you're sure. And I won't sleep long anyway, Ben added. Give me 2 hours and I'll be fine. Ben, that doesn't sound healthy. It's fine. I can make it up later. And I'll wake up early too then, Thera added. And then you can all fill us in on whatever you need to in the morning. Okay? All right then, in that case, sleep well. The day had been exhausting with all that happened, and despite how much more there still felt like there was to do, they trudged back up to Thera's room, looking at the gate it held before flopping on her bed instead, Mora choosing to sit on the edge of it while Ben materialized a few things to keep the boy entertained. With him covered, though, they both needed some rest, with only one final thing to do as he pulled Thera into his head for the privacy it would give. So I finally learned why Mora doesn't want to use his magic, she sighed, leaning into him while he waited for more. I guess the issue is morality, and I have no clue if I handled it well. Meaning, he doesn't want to use his magic to hurt people, with demons being included. I guess my stupid aunt was trying to make him. Hell, since she said he wouldn't use his magic in general, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the only thing she tried to get him to do without even touching all of those little aspects of soul magic we've already seen him doing. Damn. Okay. Then what did you tell him? Ugh. I told him that if he didn't want to, then he didn't have to, and I think that was the right choice, but I don't know, so I'd sure like some reassurance, please. Ha! It was the right choice, he told her. rubbing her head as he did. Yeah, if he was willing to then maybe that would have been better for everyone, but he's a kid. He shouldn't be forced to kill if he doesn't want to, and I don't know about you, but considering how powerful great spirits are, I'm a lot more comfortable with the idea that he be against killing than super into it. Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I also believe it if that's worth anything too. Ha, I know you do. So enough about that now. How did things go in town then? She asked, having noted one area that had yet to really come up in all of their talks while he just shrugged. I rebuilt it, but a lot of people aren't going to be happy with me, I'm sure. I made sure to tell everyone that everything that happened was because of an experiment I messed up on. On the plus side though, I cut down all of the plants, rebuilt the houses and items, and left some compensation at the guild, so hopefully that makes plenty feel forgiving. Or terrified. She laughed. You did all of that with your jacket? Used millions of points of mana? Yeah. I feel like the bigger concern then would be whether you're secretly a god. Ah, no way. I mean, I did get a few looks, and the thoughts I looked at were kind of focused on replaying everything they'd seen happen across the day, so I couldn't really get many reactions beyond that by the time I left, but I think I'll just be happy if nobody tries to run me out of town. Ha! Who would be insane enough to try and do anything like that? Sakhel, Cecily's requested your immediate presence, Ankh said as soon as she opened the door, the knocking ensuring she got up when all she'd wanted was an early night, leaving her rubbing her eyes as she answered. Ugh, Ankh? What is it, and why couldn't it wait until tomorrow? An impromptu town meeting where some are suggesting trying to kick Ben out of town. Seeing as how you and him devote yourselves to the same god, she was hoping you'd come to try and help calm things down. Wait, what? Why? I'm sure you're already well aware of what happened today. That's... She couldn't respond to that, even if she knew more than most from talking with her god. Like so many others, she'd seen Stonewall be devastated by the explosion of plant life, and she'd seen Ben put it back together again with a terrifying level of power. But that wasn't all she'd witnessed. She was one of the town's awakened skill holders and a plant mage at that, with all of the benefits that would come from such a thing, expected and not. Sure, her power had practically exploded compared to what it had been before, and thanks to Connect merging into it to turn the skill into a variant beyond the standard form, she could do far more with it than others who held the same power. But there was another change that anyone would get when awakening any affinity's magic as well. She could now see the spirits and elementals who matched the ones she held. A result that made her well aware of all of the earth, water, and life spirits constantly in town, and the few elementals who'd make their way there as well, but just as importantly, had given her a far better idea of what had happened, letting her feel the plant mana that filled the land that Ben himself would never have been able to produce, and being enough for her to ask their shared god for the real story, learning that he was just covering for the child in his care in the process. It was something that he decided for himself, and she wasn't going to correct anyone on it either, but that didn't mean he should be exiled for it. Least of all when he'd done everything he could to put things right as well. But that would obviously be terrible for the town, wouldn't it? She tried instead. I mean, his weird research center alone, doesn't he pay it out of pocket? I'm not sure why. Because he's loaded and pays well, and all of that's going to go back into the local economy. Isn't it? An excellent point, one of many I hope you'll bring up with the more reactionary members of town. Now, if you don't mind hurrying, the guild master is doing her best to keep things under control, right? With nothing else to be said, she ran off, following Ankh to the town square and finding it far more crowded than she'd ever expected, with it looking like nearly a quarter of the residents were there, facing Cecily and even the mayor beside her who were doing their best to keep things calm. I know plenty of you are unhappy, Cecily said, trying to sound calm and reasonable. Some of you have been hurt, and the experience must have been horrifying, but he did his best to make up for it. Everything's been rebuilt, and he's compensated enough money to more than cover any lost food and emotional harm. I'm not saying that has to be enough, but that doesn't have to mean kicking him out of the town itself. We can all discuss an appropriate way to try and make this right. The mayor beside her opened his mouth to say his own piece, but didn't get the chance as one in the crowd. Someone Sakhel recognized from the guild as fifth-ranked adventurer, yelled out instead. And we're just supposed to take that? The man yelled out. Toss a bit of money at us and act like it isn't a problem? Yeah, this is one big thing, but it's been one damn thing after another since he moved here, hasn't it? People trying to kill him and cause chaos, or testing his inventions out in the streets, or drawing ridiculous crowds and disrupting all of our lives and then just moving hundreds of people here without a word. Why should we have to put up with his antics when it would be easier on all of us to just kick him out? While not everyone, there was a murmur of agreement that went up. What had been a bit of occasional dissatisfaction escalated by both the events of the day and the mob mentality as Sakhel pushed her way to the front to take the guildmaster's side. If by moved hundreds of people here without a word, you mean did everything he could to save a group that was going to be wiped out by the demons, then you're correct, she said, focusing on the easier point to deal with while noticing the distinct lack of demi-demons in the crowd. All of them too new to be made aware of such things when they'd only just come to town and had only started to integrate. A group that's immediately started helping, I might add, in case you didn't notice just how well-staffed the clinic currently is. That doesn't change the point, another lower-ranked adventurer yelled, leaving Sakhel to wonder if that was going to be a trend. He's dangerous and he's careless. We shouldn't have to live like this. Wondering if he's going to cause some other chaos like that again, when maybe we won't be so lucky to get away with just a few injuries. This book is hosted on another platform. Read the official version and support the author's work. In case none of you noticed, the whole world is dangerous right now, the guildmaster sighed. And let's clarify something here. In Ben's case, dangerous means powerful. I'd much rather have that same strength you all saw around town to help out when it can, and I'd view that as worth a bit of risk. And kicking out Ben doesn't end things there either, Sakhel pointed out. If Ben leaves, Thera will as well. Good. She's caused enough problems of her own here too. We could lose the both of them. An answer that brought a frown to her face, all the more so from the looks of agreement a few others gave. Thera's position in town was far better than it had been in the past. All of the more so for the work she'd done in the clinic and the surrounding area too. But there were still a few holding on to the fear and blame that should have never been directed her way in the first place, and it made Sakhel wonder if that was a part of all that was happening. As Thera grew more and more powerful, there were some who feared retribution for past treatment that she was never actually going to deliver, while Ben didn't have an issue scorning anyone who'd mistreated her, a fact she'd still see in his casual treatment of Sko, and had herself only managed to get past with Raylia too thanks to their genuine effort to make things right between them and build a real friendship. And until that afternoon, his own scorn was a minor thing compared to the godlike power Thera held, as they all could comfortably reassure themselves that if he at least tried to make it an issue then they could have handled it, but now no longer. Before, they'd seen him dominate in a fight against someone who tried to woo his lover, but that could be explained away by the one he'd fought's overconfidence when going up against someone with the sorts of attributes that came with awakened skills. Something that would be challenging but surely overcomeable by any who'd actually properly trained in their weapons and techniques, but that was something they couldn't delude themselves about anymore. If Thera's powers could seem godlike, then what Ben had shown was a display fit for convincing people he really was a genuine deity who'd descended to the world. He'd rebuilt the town like it was nothing and blotted out the sun with the forest he'd carried above him. If that wasn't worthy of worship, then what could be? It wasn't something either she or Cecily were going to let slide, though, both preparing to say something until someone else from the other side of the crowd spoke first with even more people behind him. "Oh no you don't," the clinic head Drari screamed, the heads turning to him, making it clear to all that the people with him weren't just coincidentally by his side, but his various staff trying to hold him back from outright attacking the crowd. "You want to get rid of our best healer? Just try it. I'll close the clinic for good, and next time any of you try to get any help, I'll sit back and watch you die. You hear me? I'll watch you die." It was a scene that managed to silence everyone there. No whispers amongst the lot from either side, while the Dragonet continued to scream as a few of the healers managed to drag him away, the ones that were left letting his daughter talk in his place as Aso took the front. "Ahem, what my dad meant to say far more politely than that is that we've only recently stopped feeling constantly worked to death. And if the town feels inclined to change that for us, then you can expect us to close our doors permanently," she explained with a small bow, trying to sound professional and doing her best to squash the embarrassment left from her father's outburst. "There's plenty of work for healers. No need to stay in a place that's going to insist on making our lives harder. It's not like you don't have other hands," one tried, immediately drawing a laugh from the girl, one filled with scorn. "What? Do you mean the only other awakened healer we have around? I'm sure Sonia's going to just love the idea of helping if her niece and Ben are run out of town. Or are you maybe talking about all of the new healers we've gotten? Because if you are, you really need to try socializing with them a bit more. The Demis adore Ben. Every single one of them. If he leaves, then I doubt any one of them will stay. That can't be true. You're right, she mocked. Adore isn't a strong enough word. It would be more accurate to say they revere him. It's not like they've been here long enough to settle. If he leaves, then they'll follow. It's as simple as that. And they're not the only ones, Sakhel added, giving her occasional party member a nod of thanks. I owe both Ben and Thera plenty. If they aren't welcome here, then I'm leaving too, and this town can say goodbye to every second tier it has. Hell, you can say goodbye to more than that too. You all do remember who Thera is, right? Mutterings of a response went up, but Sakhel herself answered, not giving anyone else the chance. She's the princess of the spirits of the world, she told them, making clear a title that Thera would have flinched at having called out so openly. And if you think that doesn't mean much, think again. For just the 3 affinities of them I can see, I can tell you the town is packed with them thanks to her, and do you really think they do nothing for us? Do any of you who ever leave to visit somewhere else never notice that we've been unusually safe here and wonder why? Have any of you found that an ache or pain has disappeared without bothering to go to the clinic to get treated, or any adventurer found a dead demon in the woods without any sign it's been reported to the guild? There have to be thousands here at all times. Unseen residents who help out from time to time and keep us safe, and that safety is just one of any number of things we'll lose if anyone really tries to kick them out, and I can promise you, a single accident that's already been fixed will look like nothing in comparison. She wasn't sure what got to them, from the clinic closing down to losing all of their second tiers, or the reveal of a whole invisible race living there and giving a helping hand here and there, but whether it was any one thing or all 3 on top of everything else, it was enough. A few people quietly broke away and more followed until all that was left were the ones who genuinely wanted them both gone, forced to see the writing on the wall and accept their loss as they quietly left too, letting Sakhel slump back once they were gone and breathe a sigh of relief. Whew, that worked out better than I'd been hoping, Cecily said. Thanks for coming. I had been expecting something, but not an angry mob. Only some of them seemed angry. Well, yeah, but cooler heads don't seem to prevail when everyone around loses their composure. You did good. It looks like Ben and Thera owe you one. Sakhel shook her head. No, they've both done way more for me by this point. It doesn't even begin to tip the scales. Still, it feels just a little good that I was able to help. You owe Sakhel. The first words his god told him when he went up to the realm for the night, leaving Ben to give the cube a confused look. Why? She helped make sure no angry mob would try to kick you out of town. Wait, seriously? I mean, I know what happened and all, but come on. I'm such a sweet little guy. I'd say they had some valid points. Apparently not valid enough. Well, if we're being serious, it was just a few dissatisfied voices trying to raise trouble for you and Thera, Myriad explained. But lucky you, my oracle managed to quiet them down, with a bit of help from Cecily and Aso too. Okay. Got it, I'll make sure I make it up to them all when I get back. So everything's good there now then? I'd say as good as anyone could hope. You dealt with the majority of the issues yourself and any dissatisfaction has been squashed. All that leaves is whatever lingering trauma there might be, but given how things are as a whole, that's not exactly outside of the norm right now. All right, good enough I guess. He'd need to give some thought to if there was anything else in town he could do to smooth things over a bit more, but that was a future problem, one he didn't even care that much about at that. He'd done his best to handle the situation, but by taking the blame on himself, things were guaranteed to be left a little awkward when he got back, but there wasn't much he could do to change that fact. But it might be better to keep my distance for now to let things cool down anyway. The tower's supposed to be a couple days away at this point. It wouldn't hurt to stay here until then to let Mora get to know some of his extended family a bit more, and then the tower will take me. Hey, how long does Craftsman's Tower take to finish up? That was a bit of a non sequitur. It's called Curiosity, now come up. Okay, fine. It's a couple days of constant work, although for a normal person, it would be grueling. Not a fan of the implication behind that. Please, I'd bet a lot of faith that you're going to end up having fun with it, no matter the workload. Plus, given your talent at materialization, there's plenty of potential floors that you'll basically have the chance to bypass. If luck is on your side for what ones you end up with, this could be your fastest trial yet. Alright, I love hearing that. Fast and easy are the name of the game. So as per usual then, his god commented. And then once you're done this tower and have your level, what's then? A contender for how many skills dash? This story has been taken without authorization. Report any sightings. 8. Once I get connect its level. I just leveled Hive Mind trying to make Bloom sane enough that he wouldn't accidentally kill himself. Empty skies, you're a monster, Myriad muttered. I know you have your plans for trying to awaken them. What are they already? Well, you know sacrilege has been so annoyingly difficult for me for all the years I've had it. He shrugged. Not to completely incriminate myself or anything, but if it comes down to it, there's a couple ideas I still have to test out, all of which you'll be happier not knowing about, but don't worry. I'll make sure I look properly justified before I try any of them, and I'll only be resorting to that point if nothing else gets me there once we're a fair bit closer to the last wave. Wow, and as much as I hated hearing about that, I'm talking about Connect. I know you have your plans, but don't think I haven't noticed you constantly avoiding the topic every time it comes up. They do say ignorance is bliss. People who don't know you said that, the cube told him with a shake. In your case, I've learned over the years that ignorance and knowledge are both equally as stressful, so stop beating around the bush and tell me. Thera's beloved by the spirits and I get on well with most of the great ones in the world, he said. It might take a week or two to set up, but I don't have a doubt that every one of them across the planet could be gathered for me, and considering they don't actually take up space. You're thinking of fitting the entire spirit population of the planet within your range and connecting to all of them at once. Myriad finished. Wow, I do hate that. I know you do, but it's not like it's going to destroy my brain. Sure, maybe, but that doesn't mean you won't be under a different level of strain. You're thinking of connecting on a scale you never have before. That's going to be, well, hopefully it will just be intense. But it's a good idea, isn't it? Well, it's not a bad idea at the very least, his god admitted after a moment's hesitation. If you're trying to break through to the third tier without the years and decades of experience behind you to make it happen, you are always going to need to do something big. I can't say if it will work or not, but as far as attempts go, it won't be a bad one. Yeah, a pretty good idea for something I came up with off the top of my head. Now that he'd said it, it was genuinely something worth considering if all else failed, but it wasn't what he really had planned for his real attempt. No, if Myriad knew what he was really thinking, then his god would try to stop him at all costs, something he couldn't allow to happen. He already had the issue with trying to balance all of the ways he might awaken his sacrilege without becoming the enemy of every god in the world. He didn't need to be stopped from taking advantage of the one he actually thought he'd be able to pull off. And as for the consequences of succeeding at that, well, it will probably be fine. As long as I take the proper precautions, I don't think I'll die. It wasn't long after that he forced himself to get up, spending a couple hours with Mora before waking Thera as well, letting the three of them go off together to see her family and whatever had come from the talks that they'd had throughout the night. Salanoth had appeared at some point, the great water spirit giving a friendly nod to them as they entered, not blinking at Mora's existence but likely not needing to if he'd been properly filled in, and Thera looked at them all. So, what did you all end up spending the night talking about then? A request, and whether we should even make it in the first place, her father said, looking at the three but focusing on the young soul spirit holding their hands. Mora, we've already said that we'll accept you as our family, and we'll respect the choices you want to make about how you use the power you hold. At least so long as you don't do anything outrageously unethical, but both Ben and my daughter should be able to help guide you on that front, so we're not too worried about that. Don't worry, Dash. Where is this going, Dad? Great spirits. As the only one with the power to do such things, we'd like to ask you to create more. No one said anything at first, no one could. What possible response could there be for such a request? The fact that Bloom and all of the other plant spirits now existed implied that any combined affinity could be made if Mora wanted to, with only the issue of the request being the reason behind it. There was no reason to create new types of spirits, not really. Sure, Ben himself was for it, if only to satisfy his curiosity at what alterations within a soul would even allow for such a thing, and what levels of power would be held for types of magic that had either never grown to such a height or hadn't in centuries. But that same curiosity wasn't why the other spirits would want to do it. The greatest thing the creation of new types of spirits would bring was power for one purpose: killing the demons infesting that world. Something Mora had already said that he himself didn't want to participate in. Ben wasn't sure if the boy was an outright pacifist, but at the very least he had no interest in killing anything that was a person, something that he would indirectly be contributing to if he used his magic in such a way, a fact that left both his and Thera's eyes turning to the child. "Why?" Mora asked, too young and inexperienced to see the reason behind it that seemed so clear, even if the answer Abris gave was different than what either of them expected. "There's a few reasons," the Earth Spirit admitted, trying to look gently for the child he was asking this task. "There's no denying that our existence living among mortals has the potential to cause trouble from time to time on this planet, but we also work to help them too, and more of us with different varieties of power will mean we're more equipped to do it, with more strength to protect all of the fragile lives we've grown to love. But there's more to it than just that." "More?" "Mora, you haven't made any new soul spirits, have you?" "I haven't. I thought so. Whether you choose to or not is your decision, but without them you might not fully understand this. We and them are connected in ways other races simply aren't, and there's a mutual love between us. It is the nature of the great ones to care for and protect the small ones, but there's more beyond that too. The way we all think and all see the world. It can be hard for the regular spirits to understand us and the role we have as we would understand each other, and while the connections we form with the morals of this world are close and will leave permanent marks on our eternal lives, they are just that, eternal. When the people we've learned to love grow old and die as time goes on, we'll once more be left with each other for whatever good or ill that holds, but we started as 10 and then dropped to 8 for so long, and it's only now that we've seen that we can grow to even more beyond just us. Our own fates can't be guaranteed. Even if we could live forever, we'll still have the potential to die, but in whatever long years there may still be for us ahead, given the chance, we'd enjoy having more by our side to face it." The longing for companionship seemed true as Ben invaded their thoughts. Even if there was still a strong undercurrent of desire for more power to kill the demons and protect the world. But Abris had implied as much at the beginning of his small speech. There was nothing that needed to be spelled out for Mora, and Ben had to admit, it might be good for the boy too. Even if he and Thera succeeded in reaching the 3rd tier in any of their skills, one day their mortal bodies would die. Still able to interact with that plane but no longer a part of it, even if they'd be able to talk to Mora, he'd be alone, and what small bit of company they'd be able to give them was only if they really did manage to transcend their limits like that. No, the boy needed something more, and while he was now getting to know a bit of his extended family, considering that of the 10 other spirits living in the world, 2 of them had abandoned him so soon after he'd been born. There was no escaping the idea that it would be good for him to have more options. The chance to have peers to mingle with and grow to love him as well for whatever eons awaited them. "And you'll all accept them?" Mora asked. "They'll be your family?" "No, they'll be our family," Abris told him. "For better or for worse, whatever sorts of people they might grow into. They'll be great spirits, and that's enough. This content has been unlawfully taken from Royal Road. Report any instances of this story if found elsewhere." "All right. I'll do it, but I can't just do it." "Thank you, but what does that mean?" "When I made Bloom, I'd already seen plant magic and the skill through people's souls," he explained. "I needed that too." He began miming with his hands, trying to use them to get a point across, but failing on that front too until Ben spoke up. "You just need to see holders of any combined affinity you'd be trying to make? Is that it?" "Yeah. I won't be able to do anything unless I see them first." "Ah, is that all?" Abris asked. "If that, it's just a matter of sitting tight for a day or two while we gather people then. If we get my wife's help, it won't be hard." "Thank you, Mora." With his agreement given, it wasn't long before the other spirits went off to begin organizing things on their end, off to find and collect the holders of any combined affinity they could get or back to their other tasks for the day, leaving the 3 of them alone once more, with Thera focusing back on the child in her care. "Now, are you sure about this, Mora?" she asked him. "It doesn't matter what you told them. You can always change your mind. I won't. I'll do it. But sweetheart, you do understand if more great spirits are born, they will be killing demons too, she explained, just wanting to be sure he understood that completely. You've already told me you don't want to. Will that make you uncomfortable? I don't get to decide what others do with the lives they're given, the boy said, Ben thinking the child was considering his relationship with his own creators as he said it. I'm not going to ask either of you to stop either. You wouldn't if I tried, would you? No, Ben responded, not going to try and soften that truth. That's something we can't stop. But you aren't asking me to either, even if I could help. You're letting me make my own choice. I appreciate that. Well, if he's all right with all of this, then that's all that matters. No matter the strength the boy held, Ben stood by the idea that he was much happier that Mora wasn't comfortable with killing than the thought that he'd get used to it, and if he wasn't going to let the fact that both Ben and Thera were going to keep doing what they believed they had to affect their relationship. Then that was the best they could hope for, leaving only one last question on Ben's mind. Well then, with everything sorted out here, I think that means there's only one last thing that I'm sure we're all curious about here. A statement that left some curious eyes on him, only growing more so with the way his were practically glowing. You get different types of spirits to combine into great ones, but what about the ones that already exist? He asked. Could you get more earth spirits together to create a new great earth spirit who could stand beside Abris and so on and so forth for every other type of spirit too? It was a question that harkened back to an earlier conversation he'd had with Hellori, theorizing what might happen if Vividus and Nox decided to try and birth more great soul spirits. The potential to convert large swaths of the spirits of the world into powerful new variants of themselves, creating hundreds of beings that were just short of gods themselves. How could he not be curious, especially when another idea both he and she had batted around still rang out in his head? What if that would let them combine again? If regular spirits could be considered first-tier life forms and a group of them would merge together into second-tier life in the form of the great spirits, could enough matching affinities of them merge into a being that would hold magics at the far end of the third tier? Beings who could potentially be the holders of 100 million points of mana and the sort of strength to reshape the world. Thera couldn't see that particular thought bobbing around in his head, but the thought that Mora might be able to create more of the original great spirits was enough to make her eyes go wide. The idea sure to draw all of them back for another long day of discussions and was only stopped by Mora shaking his head. I can't, the boy told them. What I do to the locks on their souls, He trailed off, once more doing his best to get a certain idea across with his hands, but this time failing completely, ultimately letting them fall to his side before finishing. It would be impossible. Their souls wouldn't allow it. I see. Well, no worries, kiddo, I was just curious. And there goes the dream of an endless army of great spirits on our side then, along with the idea of some sort of super great spirit that would be able to ascend to godhood when they die. Oh well, whatever we get from all of the combined affinities of the world is going to be a big help with so much, just gotta look forward to seeing that.